Thank you, everybody, for coming today. There will be a meeting of the New Hampshire Fish and Game Commission on Tuesday, May 19th, 2026 at 1 p.m. at the Gunstock Mountain Resort. And I'd like to thank Gunstock for having us here. What a wonderful facility, much larger than I expected. You guys have such a diversity of things here. Do we have an American flag? If we could all stand for a pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd also like to take a moment of silence for Maine Game Warden pilot Joshua Tibbetts, who lost his life in the line of duty while flying his plane. Unfortunately, back in a week ago now. So, yeah, moment of silence, please. Thank you. And I know some folks are going to be, from law enforcement, are going to be attending, and obviously, the commission certainly mourns that. It's a tough loss. The public is entitled to attend all commission meetings, and when recognized by the chairman, the public may speak on any item on the agenda. The chairman reserves the right to limit public comments to the extent necessary for orderly conduct of the meeting. First action item, approval of the April 21st, 2026 commission meetings. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Item number 2, consent agenda. The following items have been grouped together and noticed as consent agenda items to expedite action on routine matters which may not require public discussion. Commission members may remove certain items if further public input or discussion is deemed necessary. 2A, approval to accept the following donations totaling $250.80 made to the Small Gifts and Donations account. David and Kara Tubbs of Boscawen, New Hampshire, $250. Michael and June Comier of Candia, 40 cents. Joshua Spalding of Hoppington, 40 cents. 2B, approval to accept the following donations totaling $125 made to the Search and Rescue account. John Collins, $100. Kathleen Albus, in memory of Mark Lamont, $25. Item number 2C, approval to accept the following donations totaling $150 made to the Wildlife Education Program. The Active Retirement Association, Durham, New Hampshire, $100. John Stark School District, Henniker, New Hampshire, $50. Could I get a motion to approve items 2A?
Approve items 2A through 2C.
I have a second. Seconded by Bruce. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to informational items. Financial statement. I believe Kathy is not here today. Does anybody have any questions that either way or, okay? Item number 2, update on the mandatory online registration to Hunter Harvest Fur Bearers. Allison Breen, did I say the last name?
That's correct.
It's just recording.
Good afternoon. My name is Allison Breen. I'm the bionutrition. I work in the wildlife division of New Hampshire Fish and Game. So as the bionutrition, I'm basically a biological statistician. So my work mainly involves working with the data, using statistical analyses to analyze data, and working with the project leaders to help make sure that our management decisions are informed by the data and are evidence-based. So, as you're all
Yeah,
aware,
Allison, can we hold on one second?
I'm not even gonna-
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think. And also, I feel like if she was on the set, it'd be much better because of the fact that that's the.
Probably.
Is it possible for us to switch sides with her? Is that a? I hate to say it just because. Yeah, it's
There you
just
go. Can
it's
you
without
stand
the
in
microphone
Maybe
and.
off to the side just a little bit.
There you go.
Right there. Right there's good. Can you stand there and project more,
Yeah.
particularly to this side?
I'm sorry, we're not trying to put you on the spot like this. It's just making sure folks can hear you.
yeah, if you can't hear me, just I'll try to be louder. So let me know. So as you're all aware, last fall we instituted a mandatory online registration of all hunter-harvested fur bearers. This was made available to the public via informational items during public info sessions
On your second page, it said a fisher survival and cause-specific mortality study began back in 2023. When will we see the results of that study?
So we have one more field season that will occur next year for that. Dan might be able to answer or someone else, but it'll take a few years from now, I would imagine. So once they have the final year of collaring data, they need to follow these animals for a few years.
Yeah, we're basically in year 2 of a 3-year study. So as Ali mentioned, there's another winter of capture and monitoring, and I would expect that following spring by June. So that would be June 27, or not right, we should start. We will see a report on that. At that point, there will still be collared animals on the landscape, and we will decide at that point if there's some resources available to continue monitoring those animals that are still active. But the last collaring effort will occur this next month.
Follow up?
Sure.
But at the end of your study that you're doing now, I know you just said that you may think we'll have to do some more. At the end of the one you're doing now, will we get the results?
We will get the results.
No further.
Yes.
I'd just like to ask any staff that stand up, please introduce yourself when you speak. If you're answering questions, I just want to make sure we get it on the record. Thank you.
Commissioner Stoll.
Couple questions, if I may, Mr. Chair. Do coyotes need to be sealed?
No.
Okay, so we have no idea whether those animals that you had, I think it was 169 or something that you had, were actually turned in or just thrown over the back.
Right now, COs are not following up directly with hunters when a registration is made, so we don't know what is done with the animal. Yeah, that's the information that we have at this time.
Yeah, so Dan Berger, I'm Chief of the Wildlife Division. I'll just note that we don't know that for any harvested animal. We don't follow up with people who hunt bear, deer, or moose, what they do with those animals either. We make an assumption, and now, of course, we have our want and waste rules on the book, so it would be illegal to not utilize these animals. But we don't know that for any species that's harvested.
Okay.
Do you have another question?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Hodgson.
So help me understand whether we can look at cash per unit effort for trapping and cash per unit effort for firearms, whether we have to look at that data as separate or whether we can overlay them. So my question is, I guess, is CPUE for trapping is nights. This is hours. Is it fair to say that 30 hours of firearms hunting is analogous to 3 10-hour nights of trapping, or is that not?
Yeah, so I don't think we would ever go to try to translate them in that way. What we would do, so the strength is, this is an independent index, so trapping is one, this eventually would be another. They're independent from each other, but they're both standardized. So the idea is that a trend in either is likely to reflect trends in abundance, and the more they coincide with each other, the more they correlate with each other, the better our confidence is that that's true, that they are both tracking changes in abundance over time. But we would never try to say, X hours of hunting is equivalent to X hours of trapping. Yeah, we could, I suppose, if we wanted to run that regression, but and that would be sort of how you calibrate something like this.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Train.
So have you seen any effects that are happening where the population is going down, up, or is it equalizing stuff?
From these data, we don't have information about that yet, just simply because this is 1 year. Eventually, that is the idea, that we would use this also to monitor the populations and allow us to see whether there's change occurring. For coyotes in general, our other indices don't suggest there's change happening in the population. CPUE is relatively constant. No significant trend occurring with our coyote CPUE data. Hunter observations are also pretty constant for coyotes. And then the abundance data that we receive from the camera traps that are out all the time, we only have 3 data points as of yet, but those also appear to be relatively consistent over the 3 years. But with, within the next 5 years, we'll have a really robust data set with all of these different indices that we'll be able to use to have a much better understanding about what fur bearers in the state, what their populations are doing.
Well, how was the season overall in general for trapping? Did they say it was a good season, bad season?
So reports are still coming in. I'm not a trapper, so I can't speak to that as much.
I don't recognize it as high.
But yeah, reports are coming in still, so I really can't say, given the data, how this year was compared to others.
Thank you.
Commissioner Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kind of want to follow up from Commissioner Stoll, which has perked my interest, is the comment was made, there's no follow-up after on the results of any fur bearer. And I know, yes, we have a wanton waste law. I worked quite heavily on that one. Why aren't we doing a follow-up?
I would suspect at this time it's staff time. But again, we don't do it with our other species, so that would have to be something where we prioritize which species.
Follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
And I know it's directed at you, but I'm sure if somebody else could answer it more better. Probably Dan is shaking his head. To say it's not enough staff. We've gone to this point. Why don't we just take the other step and find out how some of these people doing wanton waste or not?
So you're suggesting like a random subset of registrations with a follow-up?
Yeah.
Hold on one second, just, you want the,
I would like to have Carl address this, please.
Yes, Kurt, Chief of Law Enforcement, Kevin Jordan. So a couple things to just bear in mind is most of the officers that are in their separate patrols know who's hunting coyotes. Because there's a lot of what I found is there's a lot of communication between the hunters and the wardens. Regarding questions, permits for night hunting, so a lot of these guys are aware of who these folks are. I will tell you that I fielded a number of calls based on the new law, one ways, because they were concerned that they were going to be, on the edge and shoot the coyote. And we explained to them that you have to use it. You can't just throw them over a bank, as I think was done in the past. So while we don't cover them all, certainly, we know who a lot of them are. I think each officer is pretty familiar with that. The only way to become more familiar would be to require a seal so that the officers are visiting them to see what they're doing with, what they're shooting for a coyote. That doesn't prevent them from throwing them over a bank once it's sealed. But I can tell you, if we find that out, we're going to prosecute it. We make them aware of it. So that's exactly what that law was.
I think it should have been a little more specific, Ronald.
Sure.
I don't want to make it just on the coyotes. The comment was we don't follow up on the bears either.
I just said, sir.
You're saying the
I don't
comment,
want to make it specific coyote only, but I believe the comment was we're not following up on like the bears also. What, somebody shoots a bear, they register it. Is there follow-up on what has that person done with that bear?
Yeah, there's a lot more follow-up on a bear than there is a coyote or a fox. So I've got some officers that don't like bear being registered online, and they're tracking down every one of them. They're talking to hunters for every one of them. Not all of the guys are doing that, but a number of them are. So I think they're followed up more than say, a fox or a coyote.
But my concern would be with the wanton waste.
Sure. Oh, no.
Obviously.
I'll tell you this, as you know, I review every summons that's written. They come through, they hit my desk, and they are making cases on one ways. There are a lot of cases made this fall on it. So I think they're working pretty hard and taking it, frankly, a lot more seriously than I thought they would. I haven't gotten into the specifics on what they're using for criteria, but they're getting convictions. So more than I expected when we originally passed And I know that's happening because, and I say that because we're getting calls in the office regarding what's the standard for that? What, when do I cross that line of long ways? So we're kind of explaining. People are aware. Yes.
That's all.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Thank you. I'm just curious, thinking about the mystery numbers maybe, and it may be a question for the wildlife folks, but we do monitor fur buyers, okay, and what they purchase, and then has that, the number of catch or kills, cross-referenced with fur buyers report? Is that cross-referenced?
I'm Jacob Bell, I'm the Fur Bear Project Leader for the Wildlife Division. So it's a really good question. The challenge with tracking fur buyer reports right to tape is that we don't know exactly what every trapper or hunter is sending their fur through a fur buyer. A lot of them are sending it directly to the tannery, they may take their fur to the fur buyer out of state. There's a lot of different avenues, they maintain it themselves. So while the fur buyer's report is a good way to get a sense for kind of the economy in our state and what those specific buyers are interacting with, we don't know that every single pelt is going to differ.
Makes sense.
Are there any other commissioners that have questions? I got a couple questions. One, earlier in the presentation, it said they report if the coyote was tagged or radio collared. Are us or our neighbors or some other folks actually doing that with coyotes right now?
So that, any animal, so they record whether any of the fur bearers that was harvested was tagged. And one of the reasons why we have that question in there specifically is because of the Fisher.
Okay.
Yeah, the Fisher Project.
And then my last question, and this might be for the director, is it our intent to continue the camera trap study in perpetuity? Like, is this going to be an ongoing index for us?
I think at this point, it will continue at least for the next probably 3 to 5 years, just so we can mirror up our indices, especially with this being brand new.
Okay.
And then from there, we will assess what is needed.
Okay. Commissioner Cayley.
Thank you. Thinking about what's been said, with respect to the ongoing camera study that's ongoing, that has pretty great value. What is the value of citizen science? Because I'm not a Facebooker, but I get emailed pictures all the time of every critter we have in New Hampshire that's either at a bird feeder, on the lawn, standing beside the road. Is there any value placed in citizen science sharing pictures? Okay, if you were going to have a wide open general discussion about populations and the diversity of that population.
Yeah, so Dan Bergeron, again, Chief of Wildlife Division. Absolutely, there's value in citizen science. The hunter surveys that we do are a form of citizen science. With citizen science, it's kind of with most everything we do with indices and data collection, it's kind of cost benefit, right? What do we have for staff? What do we have for resources? What's the data that we're going to get out of that? How useful is it going to be? For coyotes, as an example, which is apparently a relatively abundant species on the landscape, you can get good sample sizes from our hunter surveys. If you had species that were a little bit more rare, or you didn't have a good data source that was easily accessible, you might expand it out to, say, everyone in the state through a reporting system. We do that with a lot of our non-game species that are much more rare, where we'll get these reports from the public, and then those get vetted, and whether or not we look at the data that's associated with those. We've had those conversations before, but yeah, I mean, all this hunter registration information is citizen science. And it's a very efficient way to get that information because it's a group that, we license those individuals. They're familiar with these processes, so it's a very efficient way to get a lot of information with very little effort.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Any other commissioners have?
The 44% of registrations were on the hunter's property. Any notable difference with CPUE for on-property and off-property hunters?
That's something I don't know. Yeah, that's a really good question. We don't ask.
Yeah, so we don't ask trappers where they're catching on our trapper report. where they're catching their fur, whether it's on their private property, on the property, or someone else's private property. We do have, every conservation officer within the district has permits that are signed from the trapper, but we don't get to that level of specificity for trappers. We collect a ton of data from trappers, and so we're very careful about just how much we ask, and we want to keep that report form, relative for them to fill out.
Yeah. So, but for firearms, though, it would be relatively simple just to run that math on coyote, CPUE for on your property and off, right? Hours of effort. I'm just curious, would you see a value in that, or is it?
Are you talking the effort in this?
Yeah, for
Okay,
firearms
yeah.
effort.
Doing a CPUE for the firearm method is what he's suggesting.
Well, for private.
Right,
for
private,
property.
Sorry,
on the private.
Private
Yeah.
versus non.
Like
Yeah,
a
I have not done
55
that. That's an interesting idea. I'll
Because I
give
get,
that a look.
if I may.
Yeah.
So the reason I ask is, the way I look at this is, other than the coyote, there's not enough tape to really make any, and to extrapolate any conclusions, right? I mean, even with 15 raccoons, that's not enough, I don't think. But then I saw very low CPUE for some of those other fur bearers, and it caused me to wonder, even accepting that you can't extrapolate any conclusions, like, does that mean they're very common on the landscape, or is it just that it's only an hour's worth of effort because it's just very opportunistic, right? You're on your own property, you see it, you decide you're gonna take it, and you do, and it's a very low investment of time, and that's why it's only an hour.
So most of the other species that we had that effort data for, there was maybe one or two. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's really
Just
not much
doesn't
we
mean
can say about it for now. But one thing I will say is if and when we look to use this effort index, we will make sure to control for things like that. So that is why, and I can't remember in all the excitement if I remember to say it, but I showed you still hunters only, and that's obviously because hunting method is going to play a lot into effort, and what bait you use will play a lot into how much effort. So yeah, that being on your own property is a really interesting point, and that would be something that we would definitely want to look at and take into consideration when looking at trends in any of these effort indices.
I think the key, is to keep in mind that this is the first year. So as we go forward, I think we're going to have more ability to really assess different things once we get a couple more years worth of data. But overall, I actually am pretty pleased with what we got as far as a response for the reporting and the amount of detail that was provided in the reports. So I think we're on a good track for future work here.
If I might ask one question of the Colonel, just for clarity, do we feel like there are folks that are not actually complying with this tagging regulation? Like, is there any sense of that you had in cases related to that?
I mean, you're all, Colonel Kevin Jordan from law enforcement, you're always going to have that, an element of that because they're criminals. So you're going to have that element. I shouldn't say that. They're not all criminals, but there is an element of criminals. What I found though with hunters is they were more excited, frankly, about registering coyotes than any other species that I've come across. I think they felt it was long overdue. They were interested in seeing the science. There's a real interest out there about seeing how many coyotes are taken and how we can make changes. And so I think I'm confident when I tell you that most of them that did it legally were anxious to register. The other thing I would say one other question I heard was, my experience has been coyote hunters, if they're hunting at night, the vast majority of them are doing it on their own land. And I'm going to guess that that's because it's easier, they feel more comfortable there, it's easier, they're closer to home. And baiting is, when they're shooting coyotes, they're taking them either in the area that they hunt, because they believe coyotes are killing all the deer, or they're doing it on their own property. That seems to be the common thread. They're not randomly hunting coyotes. They're picking those two areas, has been my experience. So, but this is great information. I think it's going to be very helpful moving forward, and I think the hunters are anxious to participate in it.
Thank you. Any other questions? I guess that will do it. Thank you, Allison.
Thank you all.
And thank you to everybody that pushed a while to get this kind of data, and I think it was really interesting to see this start panning out. So, next we have an overview of future action item for the potential purchase of a mid-sized excavator with bucket mulching head, thumb, and push blade that will significantly expand the capacity to restore and maintain wildlife habitats and public access infrastructure across state-owned lands. Jim, if you wrote that, that was an excellent one-sentence pitch.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners and directors. Yeah, okay, you did a great introduction, AJ. We'll get right into it. So the current situation is that we do have an excavator. It's from 1995, so it's greater than 30 years old. It's showing significant wear, risk of downtime, and we've got a backlog of habitat infrastructure work on our WMAs that should be addressed. So why do we want to upgrade? We did a recent assessment that we have at least 800 acres of young forest habitat to maintain, non-commercially, meaning we have to pay for it. And we're assuming we have to treat about 100 acres a year to maintain that, which is significantly more than what we've been able to do to date on an annual basis. We have 42 miles of field edges, so we need to maintain those. They've never been maintained, right? And so as the vegetation grows along the edges, the person running the tractor doesn't want to break the tractor, so they stay away from those branches growing in. And so eventually that brush just starts growing in from the edges. We need to maintain those edges. We think we need to do about 5 miles a year of that. And then we have 130 miles of access roads on our wildlife management areas that also have to be brushed back. We don't do a good job with it currently because we don't have the resources to do it. We'd like to do a better job so that we can maintain access for habitat management, but also for our constituents. And so we got to brush back about 16 miles per year. And so by having our own excavator, our own piece of equipment, we can reduce reliance on expensive contractors, do a lot better job of maintaining the habitat and our infrastructure on our properties. The cost of doing nothing, the cost if we did it by contractors would be about $150,000 a year. And that's about equivalent to half the cost of a new excavator. So the payback period is around 2 years if we buy the excavator ourselves and operate it. Additional cost of doing nothing, the habitat and infrastructure is not maintained to the degree or to the specifications that it really should be, that I would like to see it, that my team would like to see it, and reduce opportunity for constituents as a young forest grows out of a young forest condition. Who will operate it? We have a great guy that we were able to bring over from DOT, Kyle Bilodeau. He's our WMA land manager, and he's a good overall equipment operator. And then I'm blessed to have a team that when they see a gap, they're going to try and fill it. So John Soika and Nick Bunch, who are habitat biologists, who we're not hired to run equipment, are willing to learn how to run equipment to meet this gap that we've collectively seen. We looked at other alternative options, retrofitting the 1995 machine. We don't think that's a good economic decision because it is so old, and putting the mower on it is just ripe for major breakdowns and major repairs. Rentals are quite expensive, and we need to rent it for like 120 days out of the year. And we looked at federal surplus. There's no federal surplus excavators available currently. The recommended model that we'd like to pursue is this Volvo EC160EL. It meets the minimum horsepower requirements for running a mulching mower, which is 130 horsepower. We got that from one of our contractors who's been very good to work with. So this is 148 horsepower. The price with the attachments is $280,000 based on a quote we got now 2 months ago. And so most of that will be covered with federal funds. The match we're proposing from the game management account. And actually, the Granite State chapter of RGS is going to try to raise $5,000 to $10,000 to help offset that $70,000. And it's haulable with our existing equipment that the Facilities and Lands Division has, 10-wheel dump truck and trailer. And so RSA 206 provides the authority and guidance for the game management account. So the money's going to be used for a comprehensive habitat management program. for game and migratory game birds with approval of the commission. And the balance of that account as of April 24th was $1.4 million. We feel this is pretty well aligned with the strategic plan because one of the goals is to sustain the fish, wildlife, and marine sources of the state for their own viability and to support the traditions of hunting, fishing, trapping, and outdoor enjoyment. That's what we'd be aiming to do with the purchase of this excavator. And then also ensuring state-owned land is managed for statewide public access, which we'd like to do a better job of, and we could, with this excavator. So, with this purchase, we can improve the habitat on our state lands, enhance the experience of thousands of outdoor recreationists. We increase our stewardship capacity, and our stewardship capacity would be more consistent, and we'd have less reliance on expensive contractors. With that, I can take any questions.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, yeah, hold on. Did you say, I don't think you said your name at the beginning.
Oh, sorry, Jim Ayler, Wildlife Habitat Program Supervisor.
Thank you. Commissioner Stahl.
Formalities, Jim. This is information only, correct?
Yes.
I'd like to move this to an action item and
Okay.
approve this purchase.
Okay, so we have a motion to move this to an action item. Do I have a second?
I'd like to second it with discussion. I will
Okay.
second it.
Okay, so to be clear, this is first to move it to an action item is what we're doing. So we're starting with the first motion. Discussion, go ahead, Ray.
I couldn't agree more with what Ray was saying. Excavators have changed over the last 20 years. Become an amazing tool, especially within land management. My question for you would be, you're showing the Volvo, the bucket. Is it going to have a thumb and also possibly the land brush with it also?
Yeah, sorry to make that clear. It'd have the bucket, thumb, grading blade, and mulching mower.
That's what I wanted to know. I'll back Commissioner's goals.
Thank you.
Do any other commissioners have questions before we take this vote? Go ahead, Commissioner Caven.
Yeah, just because in recent time, I think there are some of us who have heard a lot about staff or the lack of staff, and you just showed us that you have some people that are going to jump into this. But it begs this question, or several questions for me, is we purchased a small excavator a couple of 2 years ago.
2.5, 3 years ago?
Yeah, and that has been used for like maintenance work on doing culverts and some road work and.
Culverts, gates, putting in signs. It's had about 1,800 hours of use so far.
All right, that answers the first question. How many hours? You expect that this machine would run, I think you said what, 900
Ideally,
hours?
about 120 days.
Okay, so close to 1,000 hours. Yeah. Okay, all right.
Commissioner Tuck.
Excuse me, thank you. Was this one put out to bid through New Hampshire Fish and Game, or did it come through the state bid process?
Oh, we've not gone through the bid process yet. We need to get approval to use monies to
Okay.
do that. So it'll go through the state bid process,
Okay,
through DAS.
yeah, all right, thank you.
Any other? Chris?
So my question is related to Commissioner Cavey. So 1,000 hours, about half of FTE. That's a lot of time that these employees were doing other things that were important that they won't be doing. How is that gonna impact what the department has for its responsibilities? What are they not gonna do because they're spending 1,000 hours doing this?
Well, Kyle's job is property infrastructure maintenance. And so rather than using contractors to do a lot of that work, he's going to be doing a lot of it himself. Nick and John, what they were hired to do is habitat maintenance and infrastructure, assist with infrastructure maintenance. So this is right in line with what they were hired to do. The last two weren't hired to hire equipment or to run equipment. they want to learn because they see this gap and they know that this is going to be way more effective and efficient to fill that gap than relying on contractors.
So is there an offset? Have you estimated the offset if we're not gonna be hiring contractors? So, well, how much were we spending on contractors in the year?
We weren't spending enough because we didn't have the funds to do it. We've been doing maybe 4 mulching projects a year, maybe 20, 30 acres. The infrastructure projects, we haven't been maintaining, brushing back our roads very much. We just started a couple of years ago with the mini. I'm maybe not answering your question.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering, so, you said that we previously were using contractors, maybe not 1,000 hours worth of contractors, but we're using contractors to do some of this work, not as much as needed to be done. So I was just wondering, how much are we not going to spend on contractors because we're making this investment, or do you anticipate continuing to hire contractors to do other needed work?
Yeah, we're not going to get away from contractors 100%. We're still going to have to do some contracting, but it's going to be significantly reduced and made up with the capacity that we're going to be gaining by having this excavator within our equipment stash.
Yeah, I was just going to add a couple of things. So right now, we're not able to keep up with the amount that we need to be doing, even with the contracts we have. But by having the equipment ourselves, we'll be able to do that much more work. In addition, it'll be supplemental to the contracts. The benefit here is having staff, multiple staff that are willing to do this work. We're saving on the complete administrative process that's associated with trying to get additional contracts when we don't even have the funding to do it at this point, right? We can use this money, we can invest it once it's paid off in 2 years, and that buys us that much more time to get this work done. The other thing is, right now we're pretty much managing as best we can, but it's not sufficient enough. I mean, if we can increase our habitat improvement work, our overall work will come down. It'll be less work. Right now, these guys are doing it with insufficient tools, right? They're trying to keep up and they're not managing.
Trey, and then I'll go over here. Commissioner Trey.
So I gave the director a contact that could help you
Yeah.
with that 70,000.
Great.
And not promising anything, but I think that there could be a significant outcome
Awesome, thank you.
and stuff. So, and I couldn't go forward because she has to do the paperwork, or somebody has to do the paperwork. Maybe it's you, but essentially, yeah, you have that on.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Green.
I've been a commissioner now for 8 years. I've always said from day one, Fish and Game has to operate like a business. That is a business decision. When you're spending more money in rental, it's time that you step up and you own that piece of equipment. I know there was a question about what the supervisor's running the excavator. Supervisors should be on site anyways, even if a contractor is in there. Get the supervisor in the machine and you have them supervise it through the work. I can talk as owning equipment, $300,000. I know you're projecting 2+ years. I think you'll earn your money back in that machine in less than that. All for it.
Commissioner Titone.
On the hauling the equipment to various sites, we have our own equipment that would be hauling that?
We own the equipment.
We own the equipment to haul it?
Yep.
Truck and drill?
Thank God I got a CDLA. A commercial driver's license. He's got a commercial driver's license to haul it, to drive the equipment, and Nick is getting one as well.
Okay, great.
Any other questions? Then, go
I
ahead.
can just add in one thing. Welcome to Gunstock, by the way. The facilities director here at the resort. If you look out there, there was 2,000 acres of land to manage. God help you if you only had 2,000 to worry about, right? I have operated a mulching head excavator before. The type of equipment that Jim is talking about is extremely effective in managing acres of field edges, ski trail edges, road edges. It's efficient, it's much easier to use, and it's a lot safer to execute the same work in an environment that you're operating in is not an easy one. So I fully agree with you in this purchase. A 2-year return on your investment. I believe Commissioner Green is correct. It probably will be faster than that. The efficiency I think you're going to find is going to be amazing, and you will be able to get a lot of work done.
Any other commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, I certainly am supportive of this, but having a heavy highway and equipment background for many, many years, I'm just a little nervous about not using the state bid process to do work. There's a process set up. Yes, maybe buildings department could put a building up, but still we go out to bid. And there are people that regrade roads. There are people that build roads, that replace culverts. So I'm just a little leery that we're getting into an area where the outside contracting world, the citizens or the contractors of the state, are being excluded, or could be excluded.
I think from his earlier comment that we're not really going to be reducing that contractor aspect, and that we don't actually have the money to expand. This allows us to expand some of our work.
Yeah, anyway, it's my thoughts.
Yep. Commissioner Green.
Just a quick comment on that. Again, coming back to, we operate as a business. We're expanding. I wouldn't worry about another contractor. It's like if I have to go out and buy a new piece of equipment, the last thing I'm worried about is if the contractor that I was renting from or using before gets upset, I don't care. This is us. This is our money, our work. And I'm all for it.
One thing, if I may throw in there, we're running into an issue right now with the state procurement process because all of the contractors who are on the state contract for equipment rental with operator, all the contracts have expired right before the field season. And it takes a long, long time for DAS to get them re-upped into that state contract system. So we won't be able to start working with contractors until sometime in July.
All right, I am gonna move this motion forward. The motion from Commissioner Stoll, seconded by Green, is to take information item number 3 and move it to an action item. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
I'll make a motion that we purchase that machine.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion to approve the $70,000 to purchase this machine from Commissioner Stoll, seconded by Commissioner Green. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner Poole, your governance committee is up to the driver's seat for a review on the updates to the commissioner handbook, which is something that I feel like has been going on since I've been going on this commission. So thank you for carrying on the legacy of many chairs trying to continually get this done.
I have no doubt that everybody will be able to hear me, so I'm gonna stand over here. And to start out, I apologize to the public. This is a 150-page document. So here we go. This has been a process that's been worked on since I think January, and I would like to thank the committee that
Sorry, Commissioner Poole. On your 150-page document question, I do want to offer Sorry about that, Commissioner Poole. I spoke you up and then took your thunder away.
So I will read this later, but my name's Weldon Bosworth, and I'm from this beautiful area of the state that Pat takes great care of. I wanted to respond to a couple of questions that were asked. First of all, Mr. Hodgson, you asked about the idea of keeping track of fur bearers that were shot and so forth. And as the answer was, no, you're not going to learn anything from 1 year, but over many years, it becomes another line of evidence that we scientists like to use to make decisions. So to the point that these various lines of evidence reinforce one another, like, for instance, catch per unit effort or harvest, this reinforces the decisions that might be made. And there are other lines of evidence. I think Commissioner Cagney brought up the idea of citizen science. And for the last 3 or 4 years, I've talked about it at various points. In fact, I mentioned it with Commissioner Green back in 2023 when my original petition to start this process of enumerating fur bearers that were shot failed, brought up the idea of citizen road ecology. Now, road ecology is basically counting roadkill, and it's done in many states in the Union, many countries in the world. And again, another line of evidence that over 1 year doesn't mean much, but as you get more and more years, you do get an idea of trends, and I think it's a pretty straightforward thing. There are apps that go in your smartphone, and basically the processing of these data that comes from road ecology sightings is not that difficult. It all goes into a spreadsheet, can very easily do regressions and so forth. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about the harvest summary and the very optimistic introduction to the fur bearer section. Everything is great, except we're not sure catch per unit effort is really representative of what's happening in the population. As you may know, catch per unit effort has been used by New Hampshire Fish and Game since 1990, and it's used all over the world to standardize effort for a variety of things, both wildlife as well as fish. And the reason it's good is because it standardizes effort. And to the extent it does that, you can compare data between geographic areas over time. It's essentially immune to such things as weather and so forth, because the worse the weather, the lower effort. And since the 100 is the denominator, 100 trap nights in this case, it is standardized. About the only two things that can be, I guess, suggested that would affect catch per unit effort that I'm aware of. One is the skill of the trapper in this case. As you might know, we've averaged over 500 trapping licenses per year over the last 35 years. And it's not going to be a situation where you have a point in time where all of a sudden all the old retired wise trappers no longer trap and the new ones come in, so you're going to have a real difference in catch per unit effort. The other is catchability. Is there any data to support whether, for instance, fish will become less catchable over time or coyotes become less catchable? I'm not aware of any of those data. So the suggestion that we're having concerns, or whoever wrote that is having concerns about the applicability of catch per unit effort to be used to make decisions, it sort of it suggests that this is reaching a little bit. And I would suggest that decisions can be made now with the data we have to bear, which shows, in the case of the fish or red fox and gray fox, that we are in a decline both in terms of harvest as well as catch per unit effort. That's two lines of evidence that basically correspond to one another. And the fact that you have a study going on with camera traps does not negate the fact that some action should be made on these kind of data. Certainly the camera traps are going to add another line of evidence, but I ask you in the future, what if the line of evidence from camera traps disagrees with the catch per unit effort or the harvest data? Are we all suddenly going to throw all our support over to the camera traps? Has that been played out in a scenario that questions how that's going to happen? It'd be a good idea to do that if we're going to do it. I'm all for the camera traps, I think it'll have a lot of great data, but I'm just wary that just throwing the catch per unit effort and harvest data out with the bathwater is not the thing to do. So my recommendation was make a decision now and go with the camera traps. Look back, you have other species other than those three I mentioned. You can always compare catch per unit effort and so forth. And you necessarily could re-implement trapping of those three species I mentioned. The last thing I'd like to mention was a subject that I think Commissioner Green brought up, and is that let's run things as a business. I was not able to be to the public meeting on Fish and Game budget. I did read it. I was at Senate Bill 48 back in 2018. I was recently at the House bill discussion 2 years ago that looked at different ways that Fish and Game can get some money. Believe me, I'm all for that, and I hope that I have a chance in this legislative session maybe to introduce something totally independent that would get, 1/10 of the rooms and meals tax or something like that, like other states have done. And I know we in our organization, New Hampshire Wildlife Coalition, have discussed ways we can influence some of the legislators and support that. Obviously, it all depends on what happens in November. But that being the case, I look at the trapping business. Fish and Game gets about $17,000 or $18,000 a year for fees for trapping license. I don't have to ask you how much Fish and Game spends to have that business going, to keep that going. And we're even going out trying to recruit new trappers so they can basically impact the fur bearer population. I've run 2 businesses in my life. We looked at that on a standalone basis, which I know you're not going to do. I'm just making this comment that it's a unfortunate thing. One last thought for those of you that are looking at postponing a decision to look for more data. This is getting back to the catch per unit effort. In my business, which was environmental consulting back in the day, we called that paralysis by analysis, is one term. And I would just suggest over the years, people have used that to avoid making decisions. A great book somebody you might want to read is Farley Mowatt's The Sea of Slaughter. Find out what happens when you keep looking for reasons not to do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Weldon. Any Representative Harvey?
I take it this is the place to stand.
So we can hear you. Yeah.
So I'm here.
Little dog on the floor.
So Representative Harvey, Cheshire 6, Chesterfield, Hinsdale, and Walpole. Just a couple quick things. First of all, I attended the hearing concerning the licenses and changes in the pond regulations and so forth in Keene. Thank you for coming to my neck of the woods. This is way out of my neck, but thank you for coming to my neck. I thought it was well attended and some good information was held there, and I appreciate you coming to Keene. I actually live in Spofford, but nobody knows Spofford, so I always say Keene. I'd like to know, and maybe you have this now, as we were listening to this presentation, a lot of it revolved around coyote, and I thought I heard the question as to whether the majority of the coyotes are caught on public versus private land. Is it possible to know how public versus private land for trapping? How many animals, not just coyote, but how many animals are trapped on public land versus how many are trapped on private land? I know trapping is highly regulated, so I don't know if that's a statistic you already have, or if it was in the presentation and I just totally missed it. Went over my head.
Yeah, I think Jake DeBoe mentioned that we don't actually track whether it's private or public lands on our trapping data. We do not.
So that statistic right now is not available.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Well,
is that correct, Jake?
Yeah, so
State your name.
Jake Bo, Project Leader, Wildlife Division. So while we do not collect that data on an annual basis for trappers. There's a 10-year survey that the Association of Wildlife Agencies, which is a United States-based agency, conducts with trappers, and we just had one come out in 2025 and we looked at just that. And I believe in the Northeast, it's about 60% of people trap on public land versus private land, but most folks trap on both. That number may be off just a little bit, but it's in the report that's collected.
So it's a good probability, it's kind of like 50/50.
Yeah, again, I want to look into that report and refresh my memory on the numbers specifically before I saved it, but I believe it's something.
If it's not too much work, can you do that and get that information to me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And just one comment about the excavator. I'm really glad you're thinking about the edge of the forest. Everybody thinks about meadows and fields and all of the animals that live there, and everybody thinks about the forest and all of the animals. But there are a great many animals, birds, insects, whatever, that need that edge for their habitat. So I'm really glad that Fish and Game is taking that into concern as well.
Thank you. Any other members from the public? Not seeing any. Commissioner Poole, I'm sorry for the interruption. Now I will give you free reign over your 150 pages.
I've got a 10 minutes in. He's a great one. He is. He is the best. The best. It's like, so I wanted to thank, this is a committee-wide effort, Commissioner Cavaney, Commissioner Titone, Commissioner Temple, and Lieutenant Mancini for helping get us to this point. Hopefully everybody got a electronic copy of the 150-page document. At this point, it's actually more than that, by the way. But in your packet today, you got the very central portion. So if you open, if you just go down to the index of contents page. So if you look at the contents page, there's actually three sections. We divided this into three sections. So we're going to spend most of our time, a lot of effort went into the other ones. We're going to spend most of our time on the central one, the one that's in the actual handbook section. So the welcome section and the agency introduction are adopted material. We didn't make a lot of that up. That's material that we've taken from other places, and it's really instructional information. So we neatened it up, we updated it. That really just got updated. None of it got tremendously changed, as I can recall. And then I'm going to skip over the commissioner section, the handbook section, and go down to commissioner authorities, state government. Those two sections were updated to the extent that it was necessary, so the documents that are referenced in them are updated now to current documents. And every one of the RSAs, with the exception of one, because I wasn't smart enough to know what an L is in Roman letters. I actually looked for an L. So we missed one, but other than that, they are all updated in the appendix. Other than that, in that section, let's see, I'm going to go back a little bit, just as you go through the contents page. You can look at it, the appendix are actually listed there, and I'm going to try to do this really quick. If anybody has any questions, please shout out. Go.
Okay, just as a quick one, when you go to refer to a section, could you just give us the page number you're looking at?
I'll try hard.
Thank you.
What you will see is the Lieutenant has been very dutifully updating things Today, I have some page numbers. They may not reflect exactly what you see up here, because we've done some editing, even right up until the last moment. But I will give you page numbers to the extent that I can, Commissioner. So still on the index page, the appendices were completely, almost completely reworked, and they reflect, we tried to move reference documents out of the body of the document, out of the body of the handbook. So the reference documents are in the appendix. An example of that would be, we took all the forms themselves live in the appendix. The instructional language that goes with those forms still resides in the document. So if that gives people a little bit of that was kind of the thought process that we're using. There are universal changes that happened. We tried to go to gender neutral language, a lot of grammar correction. I said the RSAs were updated, and we have begun the process of adding links. So there will be, when you get your document, we have begun the process of trying to put hyperlinks into places that are appropriate. So when you get to an RSA, you're going to see that there's a hyperlink. So that will bring you to the actual state website, and where truly the only accurate place to find the RSA is on that state website. Even our handbooks can be dated, our law books. So that takes care of that. And then I'm going to swoop right down through the appendix. Still looking at if you look at the contents page, the appendixes, we moved all the forms down to Appendix A. Appendix B through E were updated, so you're going to see that those appendixes included the previous directors, previous commissioners, strategic plan, North American model hasn't changed, and E was updated again to reflect current rules. F was added as a result of our discussions, and it's really a cheat sheet for Robert's Rules, which hopefully we'll adopt through this process. Robert's Rules 12th edition. And G was added, and when we get in the body of the document, we'll talk about that a little bit. I found this to be an incredibly useful guide, this AFL Commission guide. It actually drove me to make some of the changes that we're going to suggest. Those ideas came from that commission guide. It's a great document. So we felt that it was useful to just copy their information and put it in the book. All right, and then I think that's that. So now what I'm going to ask is, I can do this one of two ways. I can go down through this and we can identify, what I have done is I've identified on my little cheat sheet here, the significant changes. There are, throughout the document, hopefully I'm sure everybody looked through this 20 times between the time I sent it to you now. And so it is traditionally the strikeout language is going, the red font is new language, and the yellow highlight is anything to change. Unless somebody would like to go through it word by word, I have identified some of the larger changes that we made, and I will be glad to go down through those if people would be, unless somebody wants to go. We've been down to this document a lot of times, so I can go through it again. If you want to just do the substantial changes.
I would say definitely go by your substantial changes, but any commissioner that wants to bring up something that you may not cover, please don't hesitate to bring it up.
I'm just trying to reduce the amount of...
Yeah, and I think that's the best path. I mean, some commissioners are still going to have questions, which is great.
Absolutely.
So, but go on the streamlined version and then let commissioners speak up on the parts that might be outside that.
Sure, so we're going to go to the handbook section, and I've got page 13. I think maybe it's gonna be close to 13, I think. And what we're looking for is, we added Seacoast to nominating committee, so this will be under committees. Everybody find that? Almost? Did I get the wrong?
Oh, 13.
Did I start wrong? All right.
Commission composition? It says page 12 on my doc.
Mine says 13.
Page 13.
Page 13. Let me see here. My problem is I can't see, sorry about that. What you're looking at is,
Membership is on page 12 in the what we have in front of us printed out.
Yeah, it's the page after that.
3C.
Page he's showing.
Yep, we're almost there. 3C.
Yeah.
So these committees were moved. We had committees with members inside the document. Would have had to be moved. That has been moved to the front page, so the only thing would have to be changed is the front 2 pages as members come and go. This just describes the committees. So if you go back up to that 3C, the Seacoast and nominating committee. So at the bottom there, this red language. Seacoast committee was not in this list, and the nominating committee is actually been added, and the duties of the nominating committee have been added as well.
And the reason why your pages don't line up is because there was 2 blank pages ahead of this that have been removed, and so your 13 is mine.
Believe it or not, that took some of the longest time, was overcoming the formatting in Google Documents. So, I don't think anybody got any questions on that. Yep, sure.
David, do you want to take any questions on, like, for example, what you got up there right now?
Sure.
Okay. I'm glad Chris is here. A couple of years ago, I remember I was chair, I had made a motion to on the committees, to have the vice chair assigned to each committee. Chris, you remembered it, that we would start with legislation committee first. That the legislation committee would have a chairman and a vice chair. That has not been put in. Remember when that happened, Chris?
I don't, but I believe.
The next one.
Is that for every committee or just legislative?
No, I had made a motion to do it on every committee.
Yeah.
Chris amended it so it would just start with doing it on the legislative committee.
Okay.
And this was back when we had Susan was chair of legislation. And I know you were here, I was here,
So are you
I don't
suggesting?
know what you were doing at the time, but I do.
Are you suggesting under one legislative committee we just have language that says?
Yes, that the commission voted to have on legislative committee, it would be the chairman would choose a vice chair for legislative committee only.
Okay. You understand what he's saying, Commissioner Poole?
Yep, I am I'm looking where the best place to put it, but we definitely do it. It may be Commissioner Green, that if you go up to the general duties of committee chairs' responsibilities, and just above that, where they're actually appointed by the commission chairman or chairperson, that it may be better up there, but I'll put it anywhere. So vice chair.
They're anywhere but in the trash.
I think where you're saying, Dave, would be more fitting since it gets into the nuances of how a committee functions.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, are we voting on each of this as we go, or voting on the end product, or what?
I would challenge the commission to give me their opinion on that. So what do you think we should do?
I would suggest vote on as we go, like right this one, let's vote to see if we're in favor of that.
So,
If you want to do it all at the end.
so I would say if we're gonna do it like that, if you make the motion, Dave, once we finish an item, have one of your committee members help out, and then we just keep moving along. And then that way you approve, it's done, keep moving right till the end of the doc.
Chair?
Yep.
I was just trying to point out what has already been.
Right.
Voted by the commission.
Yeah.
Right, so that's my, I guess point of order is the only way I can put it. If we've already voted it in,
Right.
me putting it in this document is fairly transcribing.
Right. Well,
All
I
they
think,
require is a
I
vote
think
no.
even what Commissioner Stola's suggestion, you know, like, for instance, we just looked at the committee and we removed the names, make a motion to approve that, which we haven't.
Yep.
Obviously, in the case of what Commissioner Green's saying, we've already established this, we know that there's been an existing motion. We just, you make the notes to fix it, we move on. I think that that's,
Now, as an example, you have finally recognized Robert Rules for the commission, which I have backtracked that and never saw with this commission ever, said it operated under Robert's rules. It's in the handbook now. That should be a vote, that we will operate by Robert's rules.
Can I suggest that we accept the whole section, Commissioner Stoll? Vote on the whole section?
do it by section.
Vote on the section?
Yes.
So that section is section 3, is just the committees?
He wants to
Yeah.
have you vote on the whole section.
Yeah,
Oh,
do it
all
by
right.
section rather than individual items.
Sure,
So
I don't care. I don't care. I just figured that.
If we can do that, that might shorten the motions and.
I think everybody here is interested in that. Go ahead.
Is there any other discussion in section 3? That would be the section that's entitled section 3C, Roman numeral 3C.
Yeah, we have a couple.
The Lakes Region and Rivers Advisory Committees, those are not really committees of the commission. They're created in statute, and there are many statutory members. The commission has one of them, so I don't know if it's worth making a note that they are different than, so for instance, the commission can't vote to not have a Lakes or Rivers Advisory Committee, whereas we could vote to get rid of governance if we wanted to. So they're just different.
No.
The Lakes River and River Management Committee, like Chris says, is under RSA. The
And
only
Seacoast.
responsibility would fall under the chairman, that when your terms are coming up, the chairman sends in, and don't take this wrong, Chris, but I know DES trying to take control of it. The chairman writes in directly to the governor's office for appointments, and you would nominate who you want on that committee. So that's not a commission vote.
But the Seacoast Committee is ours. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Do we even, I don't
See,
think we have.
our only
It's not
member,
even a committee.
you
Yeah,
are
I
the
was just gonna
Seacoast.
say, it's an advisory group.
Right,
Yeah.
it was put in place, so for example, Lakes Region and River Management, which is Person Act, monthly would report to the commission as a report. It's not a quote committee. Same as Seacoast Commissioner. He's not a committee. He reports to, giving a report to the commission.
Dave, might I propose that from your list under A, that we strike 6, 7, and 8, and then if you noticed in the beginning under C, committees, the first paragraph actually covers what Commissioner Green's already saying, and just leave it that way.
I'm sorry, so what was the second half of that? Strike
Yeah.
6, 7, and 8?
Yeah, strike 6, 7, and 8 from our list of committees.
Yep.
And then if you turn back to C, it says committees. That first paragraph addresses the chair being Commissioners serving on the Lakes and Rivers Committee must be appointed to the Lakes Committee Advisory Committee and the Rivers Advisory Committee in addition to their commission appointments.
So just
it's
strike
already
them?
covered, just before that, those two committees.
Just pull them out?
Yeah, so pull them out of our list, but we already mentioned to Commissioner Green's point of kind of the legality of our end.
And that leaves the nominating committee.
Yes.
Any other questions on section 3? There being none.
Should we go through this entire manual and vote on each item?
We're doing it by sections, so
Today?
we're gonna try. Go ahead.
I make a motion that we, in the handbook section 3, I hope this is recorded, so I'll never be able to make this up. Again. In handbook section 3, section C, A1, we'll have line that says vice chair shall be appointed to the legislative committee, and we'll remove numbers 6, 7, and 8.
And the vice chair gets appointed through the chairman of legislative committee. That's how that vote went.
Not.
No, the chair of the legislative committee shall choose his or her vice chair. In other words, Commissioner Stoll right now, the chairman of the legislative committee, he should choose his own chair, vice chair of that committee. That's how the vote went.
Okay. So reword that.
I just can't find it in the minutes, Dave. I've been too busy to go back 4 years or 3 years.
So vice chair shall be appointed
By the
for
chair.
the legislative committee by the legislative committee chair.
Yes.
And strike 6, 7, and 8.
Commissioner Poole,
Sir.
I see you're striking out the Seacoast report. Jim, are you on the Seacoast Advisory Committee down there that by statute reports to the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department on recommendations for saltwater regulation? Are you on that committee?
I attend the meetings of the advisory committee as a liaison between that committee and the Fish and Game Commission.
Yeah. So when I was
I'm not a voting member.
When I was chair, I created this Seacoast report because Jim was reporting on this, I can't remember the name, what's the name of that?
It's the advisory committee on marine fisheries.
Okay. By statute, they should be recommending to the Fish and Game Department changes in regulations and rules dealing with saltwater. That's why I had it as a department, a commission position, a report. I would like to see that stay. If there's any reason why we should be getting rid of that, I don't know. But that was the avenue of getting their report to us through Jim. But
And I may have misunderstood the chair's comment. Looking back, it only refers to the rivers management and lakes management.
I think it ought to stay.
I'll revise it, delete items 6 and 7.
Yeah, I guess boy, this is gonna be fun, guys. I guess the question to the whole point, I mean, and I agree obviously with Commissioner Stoll, is, yeah, we absolutely need to stipulate that somewhere. But would that be under a committee, because it's not our committee?
No.
That's kind of would be
I
my,
think that the report still happens every commission meeting, but
Yeah.
you don't have a committee, it's just you.
Right.
You still provide that report every meeting,
So
so I
I-
think you want. Yes.
The first paragraph.
yeah. So I wonder if under the committees, where the first part where I mentioned why we should strike it, where it says the Lakes and Rivers committees, I wonder if we just add another sentence to that part, that stipulates what Commissioner Stoll is saying about a liaison for the Seacoast Advisory Board. Is that what it's officially called?
Advisory
Committee of Marine
Fisheries.
Yeah, let's make sure we get the actual title language correct on that.
RSA 21162.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And we'll just require a report from them.
Yeah, I don't even know if that you need to say a report as much as saying that there's a liaison appointed by the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or it could even say, I think it would probably make sense that it says the Seacoast Commissioner is the liaison. Because I don't think you would ever have a different commissioner be
What's
that.
in here right now is by the RSA.
Yeah,
Because his terms do not run like ours.
right.
Right.
His terms run by September.
Yep.
He still runs a 5-year term. If he's under RSA, and that's where you gotta, and I know what Eric's talking about. He's not a committee. He is the Seacoast Commissioner under RSA, where it says there'll be 11 commissioners. One has to be.
Yeah.
Just the way you have it in here, Dave. You've got the towns listed now, because I do recall there was an extra town added. So that should stay the same as it is.
Why don't we just add the words that the Seacoast Committee will be the liaison for the marine fisheries?
Well, because there is no committee, so what we're saying right now.
Representative, to change the word representative.
Yeah.
But it's not, the paragraph here is specifically to identify committees.
Right.
So it doesn't need to be in here, as far as I'm concerned.
What you gotta be careful is that we do not change an RSA.
I think it can stay in there. Yeah. I think creating permits, it says that Seacoast Commissioner is always
Okay. So, I'm gonna try to get by this little sticking point here that we will maintain the effort to strike. So my motion is vice chair should be appointed for the legislative committee by the legislative committee chairperson. Strike items 6, 7, and 8. Now, a sentence will be added to section C, committees, the first paragraph, that talks about a liaison to an unnamed committee that I cannot remember the name of, will be the Seacoast Commission. And I'll write a sentence that gives you the fact that you've got a representative within that organization, or a liaison within that organization. And I'm going to work very closely with Commissioner Tacone to make that work.
So does everybody understand what he's saying?
Be careful of term liaison. I know what Eric's talking about and when it took place. That it was just having Jim report to the commission what's gone on the Marine Resource Committee. I mean, the Marine Advisory.
Right.
So he's not I have to make it.
Yeah, so we're going to use the word report, not liaison. Yep.
It's the same as lakes and river.
To Commissioner Green's point, rather than saying liaison, let's say the Seacoast Commissioner will report on that to the commission on the advisory board.
Okay.
Hopefully this is not going to be every page, but rightfully so, and unfortunately this has had to be done for a long time.
No, I'm just trying to cover stuff that I know.
Oh, no, you're
don't know.
absolutely right. I'm not criticizing.
And I only have
That's-
one more item wherever Dave wants to put it.
Within committees? Within committees, or the other item that you wrote?
Under the chair of the, I think it's gonna fall under the chair of the chairman.
Yeah, so that's later on.
And that was on where we voted, any commissioner going in to testify on any hearing have to get the approval through the chair.
Yeah, it would be under officers, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't got that right.
Those were the only two I saw there that really, other
Yeah,
than
that's-
you spelled my name wrong somewhere.
Yep.
Um,
So do we have a second for my motion? So long ago.
I'll second it.
You're a brave man. Thank you very much.
Does everybody understand the motion on the table?
I'll restate
Or
it.
do we, okay, go ahead.
So I make a motion that under handbook section 3C, commissions, committees, A1, legislative committee, the vice chair will add language that says vice chair shall be appointed by the chair of the committee. Secondly, we will strike items 6, 7, and 8. Thirdly, we'll add a sentence under paragraph C, committees, that talks to a report being given by the Seacoast Commissioner from this very long named committee. How's that?
Any discussion? All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
Okay. So on to duties and responsibilities of officers. And if we go to B, I'm sorry, I may have skipped ahead here.
Page 15.
Page 8, maybe?
I got a 15.
Page
15 for us.
Awesome. Page 15 then? So on B, that first paragraph is added in its totality. This speaks to no more than 2 consecutive terms for a chair. And then you'll see that in 3 or 4 different places within the document. This was done by a 20 or 22 committee on the handbook. We merely adopted that language that they put in. And then Robert's Rules is referenced again. And then under that same section,
Hold on, Commissioner Poole, the first sentence says the commission will vote on officers annually at the first meeting of the fiscal year. It should be the last meeting of the fiscal year. Thank you, Director, for catching that.
And the reason being, those officers have to be in place effective July the 1st.
Correct.
but the rest of that paragraph is okay?
Yep.
I was confused by it. I didn't use it in a month, but, yeah. We get that, LT? Thank you. And then, on 1O, and vote for at the first regular meeting, so that should probably be the last meeting as well. Under O?
The nominating committee would actually have to be assigned a month before for them to be able to.
Yeah, but it says to assign nominating committee for officer nominations annually by
Yeah, it would
June
have
30th, right?
It would have to be a month earlier at minimum because.
You would say May 30th.
Yeah, May 30th would work. Or is there a 30th in May? Yes. Okay. just making sure.
And that should say the first, that should see the last regular meeting of each fiscal year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the only other section, the only other thing that's changed here, no, let's stop here. I wanted to do a whole section, but I think this is the place to stop because I think Ray's got something to say. I'm sorry, Commissioner Green.
No, you had an input around the chair stuff. We're on the chair, the duties of the chair. You say
This is
Yeah,
duties of the
I'm
chair.
not sure where you're gonna put it, but the commission has voted 2 years back, 3 years back, on any commissioner, and I'll word it the way it should be. Any commissioner that is going to go to a legislative hearing have to get the approval from the chair. You know, in other words, because you were doing it, Dave, you were often at it. When we had the guy bill, you asked me as the chair, can I go and testify? Absolutely, we wanted to do that. So that way they avoided any commissioner. We had issues with a couple in the past of just show up with their 2 cents worth. So we made it where the chair has to approve, the commissioner's gonna go in and testify to the board.
My one nitpick on that would be that I don't think legally a chair can tell any commissioner whether or not they can go.
No, and it was also defined, because we all know, you don't want to take away somebody's right to speak.
Right.
But it was on, if I want to go into the commissioner, which I have in the past, and say, I'm Ray Green from the town of Milford, I have to give the disclosure. I'm also a Fish and Game Commissioner, but I am not here representing the commission. We all know that. We're doing that on our organization. This was so, if anybody, Commissioner Trahan, you wanted to go in and speak on the guy's bill, and clear it through, it's on what the commission stance is. You would clear that through the chairman. And the chairman should be able to say, you're the best one to go in and testify on behalf of the commission. That's what it was voted for to put in place.
All right, so
The chairman knows what's going on.
yeah, I agree with that. And I have a suggestion to this whole commission about this topic, but Commissioner Poole, to clarify, he's not saying that for anybody to go, it's to represent the commission, is explicitly, which I agree. There's my challenge would be that potentially should be a vote from the legislative committee going forward, meaning the legislative committee takes a vote if we're going to have a chair testify, so that it's many commissioners making the decision on who they think is the most fit to do that. I
The
don't.
intent was so the chair knows exactly what's going on.
Well, so
Because chairs can get hit with stuff
right.
that, let's say Eric decides, hey, I want to send John in.
Yep.
Doesn't say anything to the commission or the chair. You as the chair, you get the phone call.
Yeah, but I think that speaks to the fact that Commissioner Stoll, being the chair of the legislative committee, is fully capable of informing the correct people. And I would expect anybody in that position, in fact, if they're not, that's a question of whether they're fit to be in that
Then
position.
what I would recommend is, when that was voted on by this commission, then you make a new motion and rechange it.
Okay, yes. So, yeah, go ahead.
Not specifically trying to kick this ball down the road, but I just want to make a suggestion. So one of the sheets you have in front of you is a, but I think it would fit better, but if you just, so you have a sheet that says handbook work list.
Yep.
Under that sheet, the last item says add communication section. So that communication section, our vision was to have how do you talk to legislators? What is expected? How do you talk to government officials? How do you talk to other commissioners? What are those paths? And giving guidance to all of our commissioners to how to do that. I think that would be a better section to put it in, but I'll do whatever the majority wants to do.
I think to raise one point is that no matter what he said has been voted on and therefore needs to exist. Whether it exists in this section or that section, that's okay, but it exists today, so we do need to, entomb it, enshrine it here. And then if we choose to change it, that's a different.
What I'm trying to cover is stuff that has been voted on and never hit the hammer. That's what I'm trying to cover.
Go ahead, Chris.
If you want to change it, vote now to change it.
Yep.
So if we're looking for a place to put it in here, if you look at A2E, it talks about conduct, commissioner's conduct, and it says forward copies of any commission-related correspondence you generate to the chair, and as appropriate, other commissioners and the executive director. Remember that your correspondence represents your views and unless approved by a majority of the commission members, does not represent the view of the commission. You could add right there.
I'm sorry, you have to help me out with a page or.
It's it's page 14. It's right before the officer section. It's A2E. And it already sort of speaks to the fact that commissioners should not be representing their opinion as that of the entire commission. And you could just add in there Ray's language, which we did adopt, that says, Ray, remind me what it says, but it says essentially, we're not testifying before the legislature representing the
Well, if
position
you
of
wanted
the
to really
committee, the
clean it
commission.
up, I would just have it as any commissioner going in to testify on a bill representing the commission needs the approval from the chair.
So you could just drop that right into E, because it's basically very similar in what it's trying to represent, and I think that'd be pretty clear. Yeah.
Is there a need to have something in there that if the chairman wishes to do that they would need permission from?
Well, I think to Ray's point, if we want to change it, so be it, but first we need to represent past commission's intents. But I think there's a healthy discussion to be had on whether it should be more of a.
I'm speaking as past chair of this commission.
Yep, absolutely.
Same with Eric.
Mm-hmm.
Eric has been past chair. I'm pretty sure he's understanding what I'm talking about, because when I was chair, he and I discussed it to put it in place. What it is, it's not preventing you to go in under your right as a citizen. It's the chair should know exactly what each of us are doing, so he doesn't get surprised, he or she, the position.
So Ray, is it a commissioner shall not shall not testify before the legislature without
approval of the chair?
Shall not represent the commission's position before the legislature without approval of the chair. That's what you're saying, right?
And in other words, where it takes place, because I don't want to beat this horse to death. What would take place would be we've got a guides bill that's in there, for example. Okay? Jim Titone says, I'm going to testify on that. Well, I got Trahan and, Dave Poole that are guides. I, as a chair, could say, look, I'm more comfortable with the guides going in on that because of their experience as a guide. We've done that. We did it with Dave, just not last legislature session, the one before that on a guides bill. It was more comfortable to send that commissioner in. But remember, we've always had it where the chair, the director, the liaison, what's her name, and the colonel were the only four that could go in and testify. What if we wanted to send a different, a commissioner in instead? It gave that authority to the chair.
So would you say commission must seek chairman's approval to testify in legislative matters on behalf of the commission?
Yes.
Dave, do you have the language that Tanya just articulated it very well?
Want me to
Lieutenant?
say it again?
I think, Tanya, if it's possible, if you can narrow down the language, I'm putting a comment in. If you can get the language, then we can mirror the document
I'll
so
send
that
it.
it speaks to what is discussed at the meeting. I'll put the note in where it needs to go, and then we can clean up the language in our final edit.
Perfect.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. A few years ago, there was a bill that was wanted to allow the taking of losses by the scuba diving, and the commission opposed it. Now, I went in, not as a commission member, but as an individual in the lobster industry to oppose that.
Yep.
And I just don't want to be, if something like that would come up again, I don't want to be prohibited from
You wouldn't
going
be. You
in.
wouldn't be. No, this language is not prohibiting that. It's very explicit that it's about representing the position of the commission. So it's going in there and using the weight of the commission to hold your position. What you're stating is exercising
Individual right.
exactly right. Yeah. So what he's talking about is us looking and saying this is the best commissioner to go there and do this job for the commission.
And I
This is what
remember
this is
that
about.
bill, Jim.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to do it. You
Correct.
understand?
Yeah.
You know, if he doesn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, correct. I think it would be a collaborative effort.
This is
right?
the way we want you to go.
And during all the orientation, remember, Jim, in that bill, I had said to you, yes, make the disclosure. I'm also a commissioner, but I'm here as
Jim Tuttle,
as
law firm
you
industry
are
representative, yes.
representing yourself, and I believe you were also helping out the co-op.
Right,
Correct?
I did,
But you made the disclosure about that.
I did.
Okay. If we're good with that, I'm going to try to finish up this last piece of this section, and then I will make a motion. So the last piece that revolved around any changes, significant changes, was basically putting the vice chair, and this is again language we inherited, kind of overseeing the handbook maintenance, and if they're not on the governance committee, that they'd be updated by the governance committee. So unless somebody's got any more comments on that section, I'm going to make a motion.
So moved.
I got to make a motion, David. Stay right there.
Just said something.
Okay, he's making a motion, I'll second it.
So, section 4A, 2, E, will add a sentence that speaks to the fact that any commissioner that wants to go to legislate, or before any commissioner goes to legislature, to represent the commission's position. Yeah, we're gonna use Tony's language.
Yeah, whatever Tanya said.
Tony, you
Yeah.
mind just reading your
I
language
will,
out loud?
yeah. Commissioners must seek chairman's approval to testify on legislative matters on behalf of the commission.
Short and simple.
What she said.
Yeah, and you seconded that, Ray?
No, I'm not done yet.
Oh, you're not done? Okay.
And now we're gonna change in B, so that was A. In B of that same section, we're gonna change that to last. Those places where it should have said last meeting of fiscal year, and that occurs in 1, 2 places. We're gonna change 1O to reflect May and last. And that's my motion. Dave?
Second, you're gonna second that motion?
Sure.
Okay. So the motion on the table is to add the language from the former thing about commissioners testifying into section 4A2E, and then to update the language on section 4B, part 1, duties of the chair. All in favor, say aye.
I'd like to discuss one little
Sure.
thing here.
Yeah,
We haven't had
absolutely.
a chance to, you didn't. Why are we restricting ourselves down to 2 one-year consecutive, like the chair? Can only be chair.
Yeah.
For 2.
I was on the committee when that came up. I know the reasoning behind it. The reasoning behind it was, when you looked over in the past, we were running into what a lot of people felt as, the same chairman year after year after year, creating a good old boy club. So it was moved to take that impression away, to move it to a chair. Because originally the committee wanted to do it as you could be chair for 1 year, but you couldn't be the chair the second year. Made it to where you can go 2 years in a row, then you have to stop, but you can come back on the 3rd year, 4th year. So it was to make it so it did not appear that there was like a monopoly or a good old boy club going on.
Well, you can go with it. I'm gonna vote against it. You can go with it. Why
No,
are we?
I'm just saying, that's where it came from.
Yeah, why are we restricting ourselves? Because if you look in the past history of the commission, there was chairs in there for,
Moose Phillipson, 12
Decade.
years, 12-year chair.
if you get a good crew of officers and everything's running smooth, why do you wanna rock the boat? But
Well,
anyway,
I think that just comes down to saying, and obvious in anything that you do, in any organization. If you've got people that are willing to do the work and others are not, you leave it alone. Plain and simple.
yep.
Because that came up during, what was it, John, when the whole committee first started about on the handbills? Back with when Cherie was around. Cherie wanted it, you could serve 1 year and that's it. The guy had said, take 11-year period, you're in trouble. Because you'll never get 11 to serve.
But we've had a rough time getting chairs in the
Yeah.
past, so I don't know why restrict it, but anyway.
So,
Moving on.
it was just a suggestion, it has not been voted on.
No, this is that.
Yes, go ahead.
I was gonna ask if it had been voted on, and maybe if this is something you guys.
I can't hear you.
I was gonna ask if it was voted on,
No.
so, and maybe if it's something you guys did wanna have written, but allow for a caveat that says if there's no other, candidates, then you guys have the right to override it. I don't know, but I was more concerned whether it was ever voted on.
No, it was not voted on.
Okay,
It only came up as a suggestion during,
I see.
So all the commissioners understand what we're debating here, which is whether or not a chair can serve more than 2 consecutive years in a row. Right now, there's no limits. We can obviously be chair forever. Is there anybody that has strong opinions in support of the 2-year version of this?
It's any officer, right? It's-
Correct.
It's not just the chair.
Yeah.
And can't be re-elected in the same position, so they can become.
Right, they can swap, right?
But not the same.
So go ahead, Bruce.
I'll second what Ray and John have already described about it. The other thing that was described is if that chair, if that person had 2 years or in any position, that's fine. To your point, Eric, with respect, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. In other words, just keep continuity going. That's fine too. It allows for this because the vice chair has the opportunity, or the secretary has the opportunity to step up and be a chair for a year or 2. And then if they want to keep that same core, if the commission wants to keep that same core as the officers, it allows rotation within the core. That was brought up.
Commissioner Green.
Rotate through the chairs.
I want to clarify regarding the suggestion.
Yeah, no.
I myself,
I supported it.
as being a chair, Eric being a chair, every year this commission has the opportunity to vote for their whole executive, for their chair, vice chair, and clerk. I don't think there's a need to say, hey, Eric Stoll can only serve 2 years, so this year we have to put somebody in. I don't agree with that. We have the opportunity each year to decide who's going to be the chair. If the commission feels, hey, Eric's been doing it so long, we want to try somebody else, it's done yearly. I don't think we need anything saying a chair can only serve 2 years. If you can get a good one, you can get a bad one. You can get mediocre ones. I don't want to see it in the handbook that a chair is only restricted to 2 years. So I'll not vote to do a 2-year term on the chair.
Okay, so with
I'll
that.
withdraw my motion if that helps.
Are you going to withdraw it? Yeah.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. So I will allow you to make a new motion now if you'd like.
Well, I guess the first thing I'd like to do is,
I think you could just simply strike that last
Strike that
sentence.
Yeah.
okay. Trying again. I make a motion that section 4.
We have lights. We have lights. We got lights. We got night lights.
We change
That's right.
section 4A to E to Tanya's language.
Commissioners must seek chairman's approval to testify on legislative matters on behalf of the commission.
Section B, we strike the second sentence in the first paragraph.
It's actually the second and third section.
Second and third?
It's the last 2 sentences. You'd have to strike.
Second and third.
Yeah, it's the third and fourth. I'm sorry. There's 4 sentences.
Oh, it's a period, sorry. I missed that first period.
Yeah, third and fourth sentences would be struck.
That's going to appear somewhere else too. Not in this section. And then we'll make editorial changes as far as changing it to may and the last instead of first. That's my motion.
All right, would he have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Stoll. And just to clarify, we removed the 2-year term limit right now on this vote. So all in favor, well, is there any more discussion? Hopefully not. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Are you going to do duties of the vice chair section now?
I'm going to go to done it a little bit differently than I thought. Go figure. I'm getting there, I'm catching up. So if we go to section 5, meetings.
Just to be clear, you have yellow stuff under duties of chair that we didn't go over. Of vice chair, duties of vice chair.
Page 16.
Under Robert's rules,
Yeah.
or it's just
Next page.
Robert's rules.
No, the governance?
Yeah, no,
Oh,
under.
sorry, I should have added that to my. All right. Did we already vote on that? or
We
still
did not do
discussing?
the vice, that language on the vice chair.
Okay. I guess I gotta make another motion regarding the language that exists, so that we adopt the language that exists in, sorry about that.
Can I suggest that's a shortcut? That the commission will conduct a meeting by Robert's Rules of
Oh, I'm not talking about that. I'm,
Next page.
yeah, I'm under duties of the vice chair.
Page
Right?
16.
Next page, duties of the vice chair, number C. It's about the governance committee. It says oversee continuing updating the commission handbook via governance committee. If the vice chair is not on the governance committee, the governance committee will assure the vice chair is provided meeting minutes and recommended updates to the commission handbook.
You make that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Sorry about that.
Motion passes.
Section 5. I think this is gonna get easier, folks, I hope.
Yeah, that's yellow.
Section 5F. Teleconferencing. This is, we used to have, well, we still do until we take this vote. We used to have a, policy CG6 about teleconferencing. We're going to suggest that that be deleted. That language was run by council, and this language that exists was the suggestion from our attorney.
So you understand, to clarify what he's saying is teleconferencing, obviously there's some legal issues surrounding this. He reached out to the Attorney General's office to clarify the language for this section, and this is the language the Attorney General's office communicated back to us.
So you're removing F, correct?
So, well, that'll come up later on, but yeah, this is going to replace CG6 on teleconferencing. We moved the language into the handbook. So it's not in a policy, it's in the handbook. And we changed the language, actually reflects what
So you brought
91A says now, because 91A changed since that language was.
So you brought the language forward, you're saying, into the
Yep,
handbook.
some of that language is, you see the strikeout?
Yeah.
That's a result of trying to make it into what, I think it's verbatim, what the attorney suggested. And actually, they copied most of it right out in 91A.
So it was the part that Chris just mentioned that it was on page 30 in our book it's being struck out of there, the CG6 you were talking about.
Correct.
Got it.
Does anybody have any questions on this communicating section? I would say you can go ahead.
I'm gonna keep going in that same section. So, well, it says F, hopefully yours is corrected to G. That's the wrong letter. Orientation, that was reworked a little bit, so you see different things are gonna be provided. There were things that were not ever provided. And so some other things were added to it. There's also links to some information that the individual will be able to get to, and we struck the credit card. I don't think anybody's got a credit card.
Get a telephone credit card.
So So, I'm gonna make a motion that we, well, that's just some discussion. I'm gonna make a motion that we accept.
I'm gonna make a motion, but want to get into discussion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept what David wanted.
How about section 5 as written in the draft?
Okay, I'll make it a motion to make section F orientation as written here on the draft plot.
Well, we still gotta do the telecommunications thing.
I was going for the whole section.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a motion on the table just to address orientation right now.
Yeah, so you got the motion.
And we have a second. Go ahead, discussion. Yep.
Off-law commission guide. If you make this stuff, this is what we need, I'm gonna expect each commission to get these. I've never seen off-law commission guide even come into play in this commission.
Yep.
I don't know why it's there, I'd probably like a little explanation, but if you're gonna make it that anything to do with authorized commission guide, as a commission, I'm gonna expect that guide in my hand. The other one is, we already get the Fish and Game laws annotated. We get the name badge, staff directory. The telephone thing ended, I know when I worked on it, but we don't need a telephone card. But the other one is the roster to the Fish and Game Commission and Senate Energy and Natural Resource Committee. That one has never been done either. And the New Hampshire House of Reps and the New Hampshire State Senate. I don't have any problem with you doing that, but if you're gonna start to say, for example, you just accepted Robert's rules, I expect to get a Robert's rules book. I also, if you're gonna accept that book, commissioners should each get one.
I'll speak to everything but Robert's Rules Book. So the AFL guide is actually going to be, that's one of those appendix items we talked about back in the very beginning. That's actually going to be copied into one of the appendix, so you'll get it as soon as you get your handbook. Current copies you already got. Those under roster New Hampshire Fish and Game Committee and the Senate Energy and Natural Resources. Those two below that are links, because for us to name them, they'd be out of date almost by the minute that we name them. So those two are actually links to the website. So you click on that and you will get that day's members of those committees.
So we can, if you look here, you just come here and click on that, and it brings you to the standing committees within the document. So it's a
I'm
link.
saying, be careful what you say we should have. I got no problem with the link, I really don't. Some people here do. I won't mention names. But if you're gonna anywhere in this book, you say, I'm gonna go by the Affluent Commission guide.
You got it.
I want a copy of it, hard copy, not a link.
It's in the, that was one of the proposals, was to put it in the event. 15 pages or something like that, it's not.
In Robert's rules, I'm glad the commission finally did that. The hard book, I'd want a copy. Don't say the link. I've been to that link.
Yeah, I'll leave that to the chair, but I will say that there are cheat sheets in the back that are, I find much more advantageous.
I'm familiar with them.
Robert's rules. Anyway, I'll leave to somebody that can spend money. I can't. So that's what, well, I guess that we're working on your motion. So that's.
Yeah, and Robert's Rules is not listed as one of the orientation items. Because to Commissioner Poole's point, we're actually going to enshrine a version of adopted Robert's Rules in the back of the handbook. Any other questions on this part? So the motion on the table is to adopt the orientation section made by Commissioner Green, seconded by Commissioner Stoll. If there's no more discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Dave, you gotta go back and do teleconferencing.
So I make a motion that we accept the language as written in the draft, section 5, F, teleconferencing.
Do I have a second?
Yep.
Second from Commissioner Stoll. Motion on the table is to accept the language in teleconferencing, item F. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. What's that?
You're getting rid of that.
Okay. The rest of it's updates to section X, forms. So here, the forms were removed. The forms themselves were removed and put into an appendix. And what remains is a descriptor of instructive language or directive language to tell you how to use the form and when you should use it.
Page 26.
Thank you.
Page, Dave?
26.
26.
And at the end, so the things that were added, and that's probably a good time to bring it up. So, and I'm not sure how this all came around, but the commission election standard is, that I don't know whether it was an RSA research on this or whatever it was, but that we needed to have a written ballot to be able to show, and that needed to be identified by commissioner. So I don't think that I included all of the, no, I did not. Can you go to, Deb, could you go to the appendix under forms? It should be the fourth form in line. So you're going to be almost at the bottom of the document. Sorry, I had to skip around.
What page are you on now?
Yeah, I've got to go to up. As soon as he brings it up.
65.
Oh, you're not going to be the page. You don't have it. I
don't
have
have
to apologize. You do not have the form. It's just now's a good time to bring up the form itself.
I know we talked about this once.
They're right there. You just go up. That's it. Pretty simple, straightforward. Designed by an electrician. Can't get much simpler than that. And I didn't even do any color coding. So, and that's it. Just a draft form. It's as simple as that. But it was brought to my attention, maybe by some of the other committee members, that we're required to do this. Madam Chair, that we're required to do this and need to be entered. And so here's a form that we can use for what it is.
Go ahead, Commissioner Green.
Did you check Mark Lucas in the process?
So I will answer this question. We are still waiting for official word, but Chris had pointed out some language in 91A about an exception for elections, which I think he unfortunately misadvised you off the hip one day about public elections and if we had to hold a public vote. We are waiting for official confirmation, but we believe we'll get confirmation that we can do secret ballot going forward.
Because we, 2 years in a row, had issues with this.
Yep.
We've been through the AG's office.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with the AG's
Yep.
office over this. I'm not sure if we could use a form. I do know.
So I know even with
we
a,
had to do it publicly.
even with a public vote, we can still do a form as long as those forms are read out loud at the end of the vote.
All I'm
Yeah.
asking is sure that goes in with the AG's
Absolutely.
office compliance.
Absolutely. Yep. Right now, we're waiting for that official confirmation. However, even if we wanted to use a form, John and Dave being the heads of that committee, they would take those ballots and then they could get up and read and say, you know, Commissioner McGonigal votes, you know, chair this person, vice chair that person, secretary this person. So as long as they're read out loud, it would still comply with the original directive. It's our understanding, based on the language Chris found, that we can actually, there is a very explicit exception that we can go into do a private ballot. But go ahead.
It just as a little further on this. In my tenure, I've been blessed with participating in this nominating committee 5 out of the last 6 years. Chris and I conducted one right down the road at the Belknap County Sportsman's Club, and that was a written ballot.
Yeah.
If you remember, we actually went on the deck, we counted them, brought them back inside, communicated to everyone what the results were. Then we went to public discussion, ballot, non-ballot, and voting. And, you know, again, it was never my job in the assignment to determine whether it was ballot, secret, and read it, or publicly vote.
Right.
But my opinion is, we're gonna get told we can have a ballot, we can vote.
Yeah, and I think what's
But I think-
important is we cite that very specific language in the law underneath this section going forward, so that question doesn't come up again in the future. So, thank you.
And then the last one was agency request, which is the one that language is directly from the director. And the form is the form that she has suggested, so those are them.
What page you talking?
Page 26.
26.
67.
Letter E.
67?
No, page 26. Now we're talking about the agency request form. This is the form that you put in place as chair to request information from the director.
Page 26, letter E.
Okay, that wasn't voted on by the commission.
No, it's not, but we're asking to vote on it now.
Again, you suggested that everything be available. Trying to make it so
I appreciate it, Dave. May not like my reply here, but
that's the intent.
Did you make an actual motion yet, or you just described it? Okay.
I'll go ahead and make, at the risk of gunplay. Forms, I make a motion that section X, 10, be adopted as written in the draft.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Bruce Temple. Discussion? Commissioner Green.
that form was originally something that when I was chair, the director and I were trying to do to keep a paperwork trail because we were having issues with a commissioner would put in for a request, and that was it. And I was constantly hearing, they never got back to me. We tried this form. I had asked a couple of commissioners, let's give this a shot, let's see if it works. I am totally against that form. does not work. And I'll tell you why. I never get replies from staff on it. Doesn't work, I'm against it.
So, since I've been chair, and the handful of these I've seen come through, all of them have been responded to. I have yet to see one that hasn't been.
When I was chair, I'm just telling you, when I was chair, that was not working.
Every form is supposed to come through the director's office, and every form that we have received.
The
we have-
intent of the form was to go through you,
Yes.
then go out to the staff person, let's say it's, well, Kevin's the only one that said this, he's gonna get it. Okay, go from you, it would go to Kevin, Kevin would make a reply, come back through you, and you send it to the commissioner.
And that's
It
exactly
was
what's-
not happening.
That's
I
exactly-
never saw it happening.
You need to bring me which one you never got a reply
I'm not
to.
arguing it, I'm not proving it, I'm against it.
Well, that's fine, but I'm gonna tell you, every one I received, we responded to. And I have backup with it going with Tanya too.
And I would say, as having been chair now, you know, it goes both ways. If somebody doesn't respond to one, that's exactly what you want as evidence, right? So why wouldn't we support having this in place? And if it doesn't work, well, then we have a bone to pick. You know, meaning us as commissioners, a bone to pick with the director. And so far as chair, I have yet to see one that has not been followed through with. Dave, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I may be and I'll ask the director, I may be the poster child for this. Does anybody have any more requests to do than me?
No.
No. No. You win the award for that.
He's got the request on speed dial.
I've got this on speed dial on my computer. And I have had response to the request. And we may discuss the length of time, but I've had responses to the request immediately. It's getting the information is sometimes, you know, more than things that I didn't see coming. So I'll leave it at that. But I've always gotten a response from the director and or Tanya. Got it? It's gonna go to this staff member.
So,
Go ahead.
I'd rather keep it the way it is now. I have a request from staff, I send it to the chair through an email. The chair should be bringing it to the director. If I don't get a response, I get upset.
Well,
I'm trying to work on my social skills, Kevin, from last night.
Well, and
But
hold on, to clarify,
the form never worked.
so to clarify too, to all commissioners in here, you don't have to send it to you CC the chair, just so the chair knows, so they can follow up to prevent what Commissioner Green is saying if that's an issue. But you send that form directly to the director. There's no reason you can't talk directly to the director. You send that form directly to the director, CC the chair. That communication is between you and her. You know, and the chair is aware of it, to clarify. So it shouldn't come to the chair, it should go to the director with the chair being copied on it.
I'll follow whatever you vote on to the best of my abilities.
That's what same here. I just want to be able to track that we've answered the question that
Yep.
you needed.
Absolutely.
So whatever way you guys want to go, as long as I have a way to track it.
Dave, would you like to make a motion so we can?
I did.
Oh, you already did?
Yep.
All right, motion's on the table to approve the language in section 10 forms, which includes D, commission election sample ballot, and then the agency request form. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed?
You have one opposed. You got that, Tanya? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm catching up. Okay. So moving into policies, CG3, now this might be the one.
Page 29.
Thank you. My pages don't line up with your pages anymore, so
Gotcha. I got you.
So the two things actually, yours probably reflects only one. So the new language is bereavement or approved absence by the commission chair. What I would suggest is that the last sentence be, and this is just day approval, so this is not gone before the committee. But I spent quite a lot of time trying to find the definition of a temporary alternate commissioner. And to my knowledge, that does not exist in the state of New Hampshire.
No.
So this will be a two-section, is to delete that last sentence in its entirety and to add that language, and that language predated us as a committee, but it's there. CG4, I'll do all of these, I guess. There aren't that many changes here. And then we can go back, if that's okay with everybody. CG4, I'm going to actually suggest my motion not to do away with the last sentence or the changes, so CG4 will have no change, because that's what we decided not to do lastly. CG6, the recommendation to the committee is to delete it in its entirety, as that language was moved into the document itself. And that's it.
Is that your motion?
What's that?
Is that your motion?
So my motion is to, yes. Well, I don't think I can make the motion as I usually do. So I'm going to make the motion that under section Commission Governance Policy, that CG3, the language, the additional language we adopt, bereavement and approved absence by the Commission Chair, it would delete the last sentence of that, of CG3. On CG4, we delete the last sentence, and we delete CG6 in its entirety.
Do I have a second?
Yep.
Seconded by Commissioner Stoll. The motion on the table is to add the language on Commissioner absent for bereavement or approved absences by the Commission, to strike the last line, which had to do with adding a temporary designated alternate commissioner, which it just cannot happen. CG4 is just going to remove the last line, as we do not have a 2-year restriction on committee members. And then the last is to strike all of CG6, which is Commission Teleconference Policy, because we moved that up in the handbook. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and I'm not sure how to handle this. This is a known work that we need to do. So committees before ours identified potential conflicts between RMP 8, 15, and 19, and there was language that discussed some of those things, and we just did not get to that in our discussions this time. That is certainly on our list for our next session, should you choose to reappoint us to do that job. But we did not get to it. So we know that there are potential things that we can do to make those better. But they are not done yet. And the only other in that section, I believe it's in the same section, mine blew apart. Dang, staples are too short. AM7.
Page 36.
AM7. Had to do with September 11th, and that we're recommending be deleted in its entirety. So for that section, my motion is we delete AM7 in its entirety.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made to delete AM7, which is the September 11th crisis resolution, which was obviously very time-oriented in what we did. Any discussion?
Yep.
Go ahead, Commissioner Stoll.
I'd like to bring up what I always do, and Commissioner Temple is going to disagree with me on this. RMP8, Keep New Hampshire Wildlife Wild.
Can we finish this motion first and then we can get
What's
to
the
that?
motion for?
I'm sorry,
That's
page,
beyond where we are here.
page 36, and we'll go right back to what you want to
Okay,
do.
yep.
But just,
No problem.
motion on the table is to strike AM7 September 11th crisis resolution. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Now, Commissioner Stoll, go ahead.
RMP8, Keep New Hampshire Wildlife Wild. The department responsible for all wildlife in New Hampshire, and taking a wild animal into captivity is against the law. Flip the page over to page 34, RMP 19, regulated capture of snowshoe hare. This commission resolves the support of regulated capture of snowshoe hares for specific beaver clubs and their agents.
It's also up above RM 15 as well.
Yes, it is. 50, right.
So 3 places it occurs.
We got one that says you can't do that, we got 2 that says you can. Kind of hypocritical.
So just to clarify what Commissioner Stoll is saying is this is back for those who might not have been on the commission at the time. This is a debate around whether beagle clubs can capture, can trap snowshoe hares for training purposes. Right now we have 3 resolutions that essentially, to the Commissioner's point, contradict themselves. And I would assume that what you want to do is strike these ones related to beagles being allowed to do. That's correct.
Exactly.
So I believe what your suggestion is that you would like to strike RMP 19 and 15. Is that correct?
15 and 19, yeah.
The motion on the table is to strike RMP 15, a resolution for allowing regulated capture of snowshoe harvest for use by New Hampshire beagle clubs, as well as RMP 19, regulated capture of snowshoe hares.
I'll second that.
Commissioner
And
Green
by saying
seconds it.
strike, you want to say remove it.
Correct, yep.
Yes, I'd second that motion.
Okay, so the motion is to remove those 2 RMPs. Discussion. I am gonna do what I owe. Go ahead.
Sure, this is going to be a hot discussion. I'll start it. Commissioner Stoll is right. We turn around in one section, we say that we're here to protect the the wildlife of the state. But yet in 2 sections, we turn around and we allow clubs to go out and capture snowshoe hares. The last time this came up in legislation, I did a tremendous amount of research and study through Fish and Game. The reason this was put in place was for the propagation of hares. That was the intent. I pulled all the permits within Fish and Game from the beagle clubs. There was not one, Chris, don't hit me on this, not one rabbit was propagated. Okay? So it did not work. And I agree with Commissioner Stoll. Why do we allow a group to capture our wildlife to train with? We don't allow the bear hunters to capture a bear to train with. We don't allow the raccoon hunters to go out and capture raccoons to train with. Why are we allowing the beagle clubs to capture hares to train with? We don't allow it with any other of our wildlife. Why are we doing this? It's time to get rid of that.
Any other commissioners have comments on
So,
this?
yeah,
Go ahead.
and I'm not a hare or rabbit hunter, okay? Not for a long time. But this means then that if they no longer can import hares from New Brunswick, there are no hares to train, and the beagle clubs all go away. Is that really what we're talking about here? Is ending the beagle clubs?
No.
Okay, then if they don't propagate, then how do the Beagle Clubs continue to exist?
Do we know who has statutory authority over this topic? Do you know who has statutory
No,
authority?
listen,
Do we know who has statutory authority over this in rulemaking?
it's just,
We do.
That's what I'm
if I
asking.
may,
What?
if I may.
Yeah.
Let him and then, all right, go ahead.
To answer your question, if I was to go and train my dogs on wild grouse on a regular basis and use and capture wild grouse, I eventually would eliminate that species. Because one, I would decimate the habitat in the sense of putting too much pressure on those games and they wouldn't propagate. So if I was trying to catch those things and then put them into a situation trying to house them in my area, it's not feasible. So we use other game that is legally used under the propagation. They're going out trapping and placing those wild things in Lackabilly as a contained area.
But, comment?
Let me let Ray go first, just because you
I
were waiting.
couldn't hear a lot of what you said, Dave, so if I repeat it, I'm sorry. The thing of training a dog, I raccoon hunted. I had dogs. I could not go out and trap a raccoon to train my dogs. If I had a younger dog, the younger dog always trained with an older dog. While it's hunting, that's how the younger dog learned. I was not allowed to go out and trap a wild animal. Same as like with my duck hunting dogs. I couldn't go out and take a duck, a live duck, and put them on a rope and have the dog train on the duck. No. Why are the rabbit clubs allowed to do it? I know the intent was to propagate, to raise, hopefully, rabbits to release into the wild. And according to the Fish and Game report, there wasn't a single one propagated. It's time to, I feel, do away with it. Why are we allowing somebody to use our wildlife to train a dog? It's not going to eliminate the beagle clubs. It's not. They can go out and train their beagles with a younger dog along while hunting rabbits. But not going to eliminate it.
I'll let Commissioner Cavaney go and then.
My only comment, and without debating, but if you were capturing grouse and you had that privilege or that, all right, with the hare thing, all right, those hares are tracked by a licensed trapper. Okay, it can't be just you and I deciding to build a couple of box cages. Okay, the other thing is, and I'll stand corrected with law enforcement, they are limited to the number of hares that they can capture. Okay, and in terms of the propagation, I'm not sure I understand what Commissioner Green is trying to point out, but I don't think, based on talking with old hare hunters, that they were gonna take wild hares and grow wild hares to reintroduce. The idea was to capture wild hares, allow dogs to chase, and within the confines, allow the wild hares to propagate within the confines of the running ground. So, the target is to capture these wild hares and do away with that, and see the elimination of the long time pursuit of of this tradition. And with regards to, all right, training dogs, I've been to a lot of field trials, really have, all right, family members that have trained really high-ranking NARA dogs, okay? I know that. Don't say that we don't train those dogs with the use of a wild animal, because I've seen it happen, okay? All right, in retriever trials, you know, these dogs are just all in, that's your business, Dave, and you know that, but you know, you may choose to train your dogs with quail, or doves, or pigeons, or something else. It happens, okay? And I guess for this discussion, I almost wonder, I can understand the passions go both ways, but in terms of the capture of hares, and let's use the last 3 seasons of that, how many hares have really been captured and brought to one of the beagle
Well, I mean,
clubs?
obviously, we don't have anybody but from small animal to really give us that information. I mean, I don't know how much. But I can tell you, in general, trying to keep something from the wild in captivity doesn't generally last too long. Now, it's a little different circumstances in how they do it, because it's a little bit bigger piece. They may have some success, I don't know. But, listen, I'm this way with this, you know?
I'll let Chris and then Bruce.
So historically, like, I've had concerns about this. I think Eric, you and I are the only two who voted in opposition to it many years ago. However, I'd vote no on the motion today, because I don't think that we should be tackling this at 4 o'clock in the context of the handbook update. I think with the last time we dealt with this issue, many of us spent the better part of a day walking the land that these beagle clubs are on. I know, Bruce, you and I spent hours up in Claremont doing it. I think this is a bigger, more complex issue than tackling it inside the middle of a handbook rewrite. So I think I'm not saying don't take it on. I'm not saying that there aren't concerns about it. I'm just suggesting that there's a better time to do it, maybe next meeting, and then resolve this once and for all.
Robert's rules will allow you to postpone a motion to
Well,
a certain time.
The only thing I would, and Bruce, you'll go next. The only thing I would say about that, obviously, as you probably know, I'm opposed to this, but this is simply removing a resolution of the commission. This doesn't change the rule. We would have to go through a rulemaking process for this to ever change and the public to have an interface on this topic. So I think Commissioner Stoll has a valid point that there's a contradiction here.
There is.
And I think there's the further concern that, my genuine concern as a dog person, and I'm sure Commissioner Trahan will also support this, which is, okay, so if we are going to pursue this and what is the alternative we're going to provide so we do not end these beagle clubs? What is the path forward to make this work? But that, again, is a rulemaking conversation. That's a stakeholder. This is a simple conversation about the fact that we do have 3, resolutions that do contradict each other. The motion is on the table. But Bruce, you were next on the list to say something.
Yeah, I'm obviously from Sullivan County where they have it. I'm going to speak to the use of it by the Claremont Beagle Club. They're certainly my constituents. I think if you had staff here today, you'd find out they probably didn't capture more than 8 or 10 rabbits, if they captured any last year. Those of you who have been to the Beagle Club know that it's a 40, 50 acre enclosure. They don't shoot. They don't have rifles inside the pens. They don't trap the rabbits and keep them in the pen. The pen is 40, 50 acres, and they can get out underneath the darn fence if they want to. I don't see the issue. If we want to speak to a bigger issue, if you're a member of the Lake Sunapee Retriever Club and you hold an AKC retriever sanctioned trial, you know what happens that goes on in those trials. They shoot them. They put 2 gunners out per bird. And I've been to them and I've participated in them. And you know how many shots go off at each bird? 4. Okay? There's 2 gunners, they got over and under shotguns, and they're required to shoot 4. We don't want that duck flying away. By the same token, we go out and we do the same thing at field trials with pheasants with respect to retrievers, and I'm not sure about pointing dogs and that sort of thing. I can't speak to that. But I do know at sanctioned AKC field trials, they make sure the bird doesn't fly too far. I know that for a fact. Having said that, it is a New Hampshire heritage, which this commission has spoken to on many, many times, the heritage of rabbit hunting with your son or your grandson or your daughter or your friends or whatever. It is a heritage, and these people bring their beagles to the Claremont Beagle Club. They run a dog, could be a young dog, and they have a trial. I also know that New Hampshire Fish and Game staff attends and goes to the Beagle Club to check on the rabbit health. I've been there when a wildlife officer came. I met the man, and it was 4 or 5 years ago now. Maybe they don't do that anymore, but they sure did then. So having said that, it's difficult for me to not support our people that participate in this club, and I know there's other clubs in the state. I'm not sure which counties they're in, but I'm sure as commissioners you know the other 2 or 3, where they are, what they do. I can't speak for them, but I know the one at Claremont, it's joined up with the one over in Unity, and they run a pretty good program there. They run a good program there, and they don't take on and trap rabbits to go out, put them in a pen, and shoot them with a 20-gauge shotgun over a dog. They don't do that. It's not what they do.
Any other commissioners?
But I'm not quite finished.
Sorry.
And I'll be short.
No, you take
Okay.
as much time as you want.
Yeah, and I know we're gonna trap 8 or 10 rabbits a year. I also know that when we're out deer hunting, we see coyotes. And I know what happens. Done it myself, we shoot them. And do they get reported? Well, probably not. But with new law, the wanton waste law, maybe they will start to be reported. And the coyote take in the Connecticut River Valley, where I think the agriculture is probably a little more prominent, the Connecticut River Valley, I think the statistics would show that in our county, Cheshire County, Grafton County, I'm not sure, Eric, about up around Colwaus County, how much agriculture really is in the bottomland where
That's the only place there isn't.
yeah, the coyotes can, but I don't support hunters going on a drive to shoot coyotes. And we've all seen it. We know exactly where it happens. It happens in Maine. Could happen in parts of New Hampshire that we don't know about. Drive a coyote out amongst 20 hunters just because they think it saves the deer population. Coyotes aren't necessarily friendly to deer, but there's an awful lot of unethical hunters who don't take a great shot and wound a deer. They don't find, the coyotes do. So I'm a little passionate about leaving this alone. If you want to clean it up, certainly it's an 11-member commission, you know. And today I'm not even going to speak about wild goose, because that has a history of sportsmen not being able to get on that lake, a state lake, 3,000-4,000 acres, 70, 80 miles of shoreline, and we can't move off center. But anyway, that's my opinion, and wherever we want to go with this, I think there's a motion on the floor.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I would like to amend the motion on the floor. This is a hot subject, and I agree, can't handle it today. I'd like to amend the motion on the floor to postpone this for further discussion until next month's meeting, especially the other five.
Is that Robert's Rules people check in, how would we do this? Because
Yeah, I believe under Robert's rules.
Eric made, so you're making an amendment.
He has to pull his motion.
Eric made the
And then
first,
Phil.
Ray seconded it.
Wait a minute, so how do we get to do this? I'm hearing two different things.
So you vote it down.
You
Eric,
gotta vote on the amendment. You vote on the amendment first, and then you vote on, if it passes, you vote on the amendment.
Okay, and does somebody have to second his amendment?
I'll second.
Yes.
Okay, so the amendment on the table is to take this discussion up in our June meeting in Concord.
Yes.
Sure.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Now we have to go to the actual motion. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
So the actual, now, wait a minute, is the motion includes the amendment though, right?
Yes.
Include the amendment.
Motion as amended.
Motion as amended, which is that we take resolution RMP 15 and RMP 19 up again in June as tonight. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, I think we should probably potentially maybe actually add that to the agenda, like literally. Let's discuss that. Is there anything else?
Expect it to be deeded,
Yes,
that's what the public.
yes. Dave, is there anything else right now that you need to get approved by us, or are we done today?
I'd like some direction as to how to proceed to next month. I'm not gonna, I contemplated, I just don't think we're in a position to vote on anything today, so I can ask, as the whole document. I mean, if somebody feels differently, that's fine, but what I would like to do is to provide an electronic copy of the document with the changes that have been voted on today.
Yep.
And provide that to the members, to be by June 5th. And I would like to provide it, this is a question to the commission. Is it okay to provide it without all the highlights? Provide a clean copy to everybody so that you're not reading old language, just the handbook as it will be. Absent, I won't print out all the, this will be about 200 pages when it's all printed. We print everything. This document will be about 200 pages long. So the documents that I'll provide you with will be maybe that in electronic version, but not certainly in a written version. So do we have to have a written version for June? Or can I just give you an electronic version of what this is, as opposed to making another draft?
I think the electronic version absolutely works, reflecting all the changes that were voted on today.
Come to that meeting and hopefully get a vote on it.
Yeah. And something to mention here, which I think was a very valid discussion I heard in their committee, which we kind of accidentally started going down that path, is Commissioner Cady brought this up one day in there, which was that traditionally the commission voted on all of these resolutions every year. And I know after a meeting like this today, it seems like that would be a lot, but if we keep up with it, it's actually very little. You're just reconfirming the existence and probably can adopt almost the whole document and maybe debate one or two here and there. And I just would love to see the committee get to that place, because I think that that's a great suggestion for us moving forward to keep this stuff up to date and in line, so things don't get behind us, so we end up with something like this. So, thank you for the work that you folks are doing. Exceptional job. And thank you everybody for sitting through that.
Dave, I think you should go fishing for a couple of days.
Shut off your phone. Don't answer it. All right, so I'm going to try to move this along here, because I know everybody's feeling a little tired after that. Anybody have any old business today? Old business. Go ahead, Commissioner Poole.
I I make a motion that the commission work with the legislator to initiate legislation giving the commission approval authority regarding the adoption of fisheries rules.
Let me hold off and just wait until Commissioner Stoll's back here. So he's, yeah, sorry, I didn't realize. And I believe we don't have any committee reports today, correct?
I think I gave it 3 hours.
Yeah, you did. While we're waiting on Commissioner Stoll, any commission reports?
We're going to table mine till next month.
Okay.
Commissioner reports? Is that
What's
what
that?
It's commissioner reports?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's all about Dave today, but.
That's okay. No, it's fine. I just want to wait until Eric's here for any kind of motions to be made.
Chairman,
Yeah.
you want to go back to the Seacoast report for?
Oh, yes, sorry. Did I skim over that? I did. Sorry. Seacoast Commissioner,
Make it
go.
quick, there was a public hearing on May 11th at the Advisory Committee on Marine Fisheries pertaining to recreational take of 2 species, mackerel and bluefish. On mackerel, they're going to be increasing the take from 20 fish per day to 25 fish per day. And for bluefish, the take will be increased from 3 fish per day to 5 fish per day. Back last month, I reported on the coastal cleanup, and I didn't have a figure then as to how much debris was collected. And we got the figure now. It's 8.2 tons of debris was collected off the coast. That's it.
Chairman, I just want to add that Melissa Nemeth, the legislative liaison, did provide this legal handout. It's on the
Everybody
front.
got that? All right, perfect. Now that we have Commissioner Stoll back, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I'm just trying to rush along. I'm going to second it.
Let him redo the motion. Commissioner Poole, can you make your motion?
Make a motion, the commission work with the legislators to initiate legislation giving the commission approval authority regarding the adoption of fisheries rules.
I'm second that.
Does everybody understand the motion he just made? Any discussion? The motion on the table is to pursue a legislative change to the fisheries authority, to change it to the commission's authority.
Can I speak to my motion?
Absolutely.
So, the commission has a responsibility to represent our constituents as delineated in RSA 206:4-A. I believe that's our responsibility to be more involved in the rulemaking process than consulting. I've been approached by a number of constituents over the course of my appointment asking what we, the commission, are doing about some of the fisheries proposals over the last few years. And my answer, as it must be, was that we do not have legislative authority to do anything but express an opinion. I believe that our constituents would have more confidence in the process if the majority of the commissions approved rules that were to be adopted.
Any other discussion on this item?
You saying okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner. Yeah, sorry.
I agree with the motion because, especially in the last 2 weeks, since we've been having hearings, the public has been coming up to some of us commissioners about why are we allowing this to happen? This has been going on for 2 years and we've always gotten the answer, we do not have the authority of it. I agree with Commissioner Poole that this is a time where the commission, I think under the legislative committee, just like we did with the poaching bill, that this commission looks at it and submits a bill to get our authority back on fisheries.
Any other, Chris?
So, generally, I do think that we ought to take a look at this authority. It feels to me like the motion is missing a step. So what I would suggest is that, the motion be to ask the governance committee to bring a proposal to us that we can support, right? Because I don't know what it means to hand off to a legislator the ability to propose a law to change these statutory authorities, right? So what I think, if we're gonna explore this and understand what it means, what we should do as a commission is say to the governor's committee, if we have concerns about the role we play for fisheries rules, bring us back a proposal of how they could be changed, and then we can vote to support it or not support it. Like, that feels like a process that's more in line with the way we typically do things on statutory or public policy issues.
Commissioner Temple.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Would this type of process carry over to hunting rules and regulations?
It sounds like his motion was explicit to fisheries rules.
No, I understand that.
Right.
So what I'm saying, as a commission though, are we willing to say maybe we should explore the hunting rules as well? I mean, one of our missions or one of our tenets is based on science. Is that not true? I think it's true. We look to the executive director and her staff to give us factual scientific data so we can make decisions. So I'm just wondering, Dave, would it be more appropriate to, if we're going to go down that route, to open up the discussion, be it through the governance committee or whoever, to talk about hunting seasons, hunting regulations?
Go ahead. Are you done? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm done.
I feel like I quickly cut you off. Commissioner Green.
One of the reasons why we're staying on the fisheries is because, for example, when we went and did the poaching bill, we were going into a lot of RSAs, which can create in legislation, a lot of legislators tacking on to, hey, I want to change 40 RSAs. A lot of legislatures will try to tack on. The thought in this is to keep it right now to fisheries. I agree with Commissioner Temple that we bring also on to with hunting. This commission has lost a lot of its authorities over the years, and the public's tired of it. We want to get it back, and I say we start with the fisheries first, then take on the second, the hunting part second. I know what you're saying, Chris, but this is legislation. I think it should fall under the legislation committee.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think.
Hey, you never said governance. I think
Oh,
that's
I'm
what's
sorry.
confusing people.
I was looking
Yeah.
at Eric, and
Yeah.
was I saying governance?
You were
I
saying
apologize.
governance.
I meant
didn't know the
legislative
damn
committee. I had governance on the brain because Dave for so long.
This is about getting our authorities back.
So, hearing so far, Chris has concerns that if the motion is incorrect, there isn't really guardrails on this process, and I'm going to agree with the fact that there needs to be steps taken here. But the motion on the table right now, can you read the motion again for us, David Poole?
You bet.
Thank you.
Make a motion that the commission work with the legislator or legislators to initiate legislation giving the commission approval authority regarding the adoption of fisheries rules. And to the extent that we can shorten this up, I'm more than happy to withdraw that motion and add the language that the commission direct the legislative committee to look into proper way to adopt these.
All right, so you're withdrawing your motion, that's the motion you're making now?
I don't think I can amend my motion.
Huh?
I don't think I can amend my motion.
But you can withdraw your motion,
I can withdraw
correct?
it, yep.
Okay, so motion's withdrawn. What's your new motion?
That the commission direct the legislative committee to develop a proposal to give the commission approval authority regarding adoption of fisheries rules and report back to the commission.
So
The findings of the process.
maybe like by July, the July meeting.
By July,
And
yeah.
The reason is that the window for bill filing in election year will open up right after the primary in early September. And then there'll be another window for bill filing right after the general election. So if you brought it back at the July meeting, there'd be plenty of time to get it squared away in time to get it filed for next year, if that's what the commission wanted to do.
By the July meeting.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Could I hear, sorry, Dave, but we have not time over here. Could I just hear the exact first?
Do you want to
You said just to go with a proposal, correct?
Yeah. I make a motion that the commission direct the legislative committee to look into legislation to give the commission approval authority on fisheries rules and to report back to the commission by the July meeting with their recommended procedure.
A proposal or?
Yeah, a proposal. How's that?
I'll go along with that second, I'll second it.
All right, second. Discussion then.
Go ahead, David, first.
Um,
All right, I'll go ahead with the discussion.
You have something?
What?
You have something to add to discussion?
Do I have discussion?
Yes.
He remembered what
Go
he
ahead.
had said.
All right.
Yeah.
Steve, just stand by for a moment. I see you.
The reason of this is what I want to push for, to make it clear, is this would be the commission is moving towards its authority and that we are submitting the bill. It's not that Fish and Game submitting the bill. The commission would be submitting the bill. And this is something that has come up over the last couple of years, but really a lot in the last week and a half at the public meetings that just took place. That the public wants this commission into the authority of what's going on with this.
Any other comments from the commission? Steve, I am going to say, traditionally we don't allow comments on a motion like this, and I'm not trying to minimize you in any capacity. I think every commissioner in here has probably spoken to you and understands where you sit on this, and so point being, I am going to leave it to the end for public discussion and allow the vote to go forward. But everybody has noted.
The only reason I raised my hand is I have information that may be pertinent to you voting on this particular motion.
I have a feeling this motion is going to go in a direction you want it to anyways, so I wouldn't stress it too hard. The one commentary I would like to make on this is, I'm not going to paint a pretty picture that the communications through this information gathering process went well. It hasn't. There's been a profound amount of communication missteps, but the whole intent of this newer process was to eliminate what we went through 2 years ago, and obviously the ball's been dropped a little bit on that. There's been a pushback to believe that process hasn't been honored in a way. The rulemaking hasn't actually started, which happens in June. That being said, I don't disagree with these, the search for further authority for the commission at all. I just want to clarify that, the director's caught a lot of flack, and I think we're all aware of that. I think all of us have probably given her flack on this in some capacity. She did make an honest effort to try to make this a better process. And I think the process can get better again, and I think the director sees that. And I just don't want this to be a full reflection of somehow that this is a result of that. I believe as commissioner that this commission should have more authorities over rules, period, regardless of whatever had happened in the public or whatnot, because it's the purpose of a commission. We're supposed to be that oversight, that public input. But I just wanted to add that to this discussion before this one. Go ahead.
A little moment, and I think the director could bear this out. The first day we met each other, we both got, in fact, I carried the director's paperwork to the Secretary of State. And I think the second thing I said to her was how I felt about the commission having, so this is not directly, the timing may be associated with it, but it's not. I had that discussion long ago with the director, so it's not a reflection directly upon this procedure at all. It's what I think us as representatives, just what I stated, what us as representatives have for do. That's how I feel.
Go ahead, Commissioner Temple.
I'll go ahead and vote in favor of this, but I'd like the record to show that I am concerned that this motion does not include hunting. I assume it includes saltwater fishing and the policy we have there, or that will be discussed in the legislative.
I think you're
governance
specific to the
committee.
fisheries rules, which are.
I said fisheries. I didn't say inland fisheries.
Okay.
So it'd be 400, 500, and 600.
Okay.
At least as a discussion point. Yeah.
Discussion.
So as a commission, you know, as a group, there's 11 of us that set policy. And if we're going to look at inland fisheries, exclude the salt water, and exclude hunting and abilities, trapping, whatever, will we not be in the future coming back to discuss us being involved in setting the whitetail season?
I think that there will. I think the whitetail season will do something. Yeah.
Or other.
But I think part of this, to clarify, Commissioner Temple, to Commissioner Green's point, there's many statutes around hunting, many, as where there's just a handful around this topic. So the opportunity to kill this all via trying to bite off too much at once, I think, is the approach that these folks are trying to do here. And again, look at what the viability is, what law would actually have to be changed, how many laws would have to be changed. There's a lot of questions. And I think that this is a great starting point to what I've heard for I've been on this commission, believe it or not, for 5 years now. It's kind of hard to believe, but for 5 years I've heard this conversations, which again, not a reflection of the director, it's been a reflection of this commission wanting to take its authority back. So I don't think that this is the end of that discussion, Commissioner Temple. I think it's a beginning point. So, if there's no other discussion, I'm gonna call this to vote. So the motion on the table, you wanna, I'm not gonna make you read it one more time, is to task the legislative committee with researching potential options for the commission to seek fisheries authorities and what those paths could look like. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No opposed. Motion passes. All right. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Poole, did you have an actual commissioner report that you wanted to?
Just a little one.
Okay.
So, on the 12th, I received a phone call at 12 o'clock from a very concerned individual that had a bear that was into their third beehive. And turns out if you Google CO and Grafton County, you get Dave Poole. So I said, no, I have no law enforcement authority at all. Called these people, expressed the fact that they'd called at 7:30 in the morning, called dispatch. And when they used the word dispatch, I said, okay, call that same number again now. And if you don't get any satisfaction before the end of the day, please, in fact, text me and let me know how you did. These people were leaving the next day. He texted me back at 4:35 and said, I talked to a biologist. They said they were coming out tomorrow. They said they were going to take care of it. Really appreciate their effort. So I just wanted to congratulate Dan. I already got to talk to the director that it absolutely misinformed, but very happy customer.
Any other commissioner reports? I have one brief report. Last night I went to New Durham Library. I mentioned some months ago that I got invited over there to talk to some folks from my county about the commission. I invited Patrick along because he's my neighbor. Alton's one town over in his county, but he wasn't able to attend. There was about 20 people that came, and I talked a little bit about the civics of the commission, what we do, what our authorities are, how they interface with us. There was a lot of fun questions, everything from ticks to a lot of insect questions, actually, now that I think of it. But it was a very interesting crowd, and they seemed a lot more positive about our commission when we walked out of that room. So anyway, I wanted to report that. No more commissioner reports. I'm going to go on to the director's report.
Yeah, I'll skip the updates from all the divisions, but I will talk a little bit about the recent events. As you know, we've been hosting the public information sessions on the proposed license fee adjustment and the trout pond rules or trout pond designations. And during these sessions, we've been outlining the department's financial outlook and the need for corrective action, including the three-step process or approach that we all talked about with modernizing the customer engagement piece, reviewing and updating the fees, and then exploring the legislation that may include, new license types and updated fines and things like that. We also shared the data and criteria used in review of the trout pond designations or the proposed trout pond designations. Across the 4 meetings, we had about 120 to 100, well, actually it was more 130 to 140 people show up across the 4. Most participants expressed support for the proposed fee adjustments and offered really good additional ideas related to the fees and the fundraising, as well as potential for new tags and stamps. There was very little discussion about the wildlife or fish habitat fees, other than people generally supported it. Several questions were raised about funding for search and rescue, which we were able to help them understand. Colonel Jordan was able to clarify that those operations are no longer supported by hunting and fishing license revenues, and instead that the Hike Safe Card and other sources now cover those costs, such as staff time, equipment, and training. In addition to the in-person sessions, we conducted what I would now call a cold call style Facebook survey on the fee adjustments, where no initial background information was provided. It was unfortunate, that was not what the plan was, but that is what happened. Nonetheless, though, it did help us identify where public lacks information and helped us identify what their misconceptions were. And despite the context of why we might be proposing fee adjustments, we actually found that over 55% of the respondents still indicated support for some level of a fee adjustment. Much of the discussion at the sessions, of course, focused on the trout pond designations. We are really having to overcome history and past mistakes. There's a lot that needs to be done there. We received a lot of helpful information, I think, from the constituents that showed up about particular ponds. We gained a clear understanding of some of the angler preferences associated with these things. Many anglers also expressed interest in seeing the data metrics. So we talked a little bit about, how we could display that so that they had a better understanding of the evaluations we were taking. Right now, and last night, in fact, a gentleman suggested we follow a model. And so we're looking at options for providing more data, including maybe suggestions of adding metadata to our current GIS layers that on the stocking map, so people can click on a site and see a little bit more information that we have on those sites, just to improve the transparency. Until we can get a CRM in place and we have more advanced technology, I think that's probably a good interim fix for us at this point. Right now, we're reviewing all the input on both topics, and we'll determine whether or not to pursue rule changes. If so, we'll also determine what adjustments will be needed to be made. I'm certain that there are going to be adjustments to the trout pond rules for sure. We are still scheduled tentatively for a June 3rd public hearing if we move forward, and June 10th is tentatively scheduled for the fee adjustments, but those dates can also be adjusted. I know that Diane and her team, Chief Timmons and her team, are working to make connections with the stakeholder groups now that we have the public input. We can bring that public input to the stakeholder groups and talk with them about these pieces. So I think overall, this process, while it was different and maybe not well understood from the constituents, I think I know in the end, we got a lot of compliments. After each of the meetings, we had several people many people come up to us, thank us for this. One thing we consistently heard was we felt we were heard tonight, which was, I think, important. It's an initial step. It's unfortunate that this approach had not started 2 years ago, because I think we're trying to overcome a lot, both from the commission, you guys are facing a lot that we have to overcome, and the department is facing a lot to overcome from previous efforts. So overall, I think the meetings went well. I would like to see more participation, but I think the participants we had there were very engaged and very informative, and I feel very confident about taking that social component, their interests, their points, the things that they're seeing, and bringing that into our proposal. So I think we're on the right path. I think we're moving in a good direction. I'd like to see us do this more often and make it become more of the standard for us as we move forward, so that we're working with our constituents more thoroughly and closely. And I'll just leave it at that. I won't go into any of the details of the ongoing events with all the different divisions, just because we're late on time, but I do think that one was important to bring up. I know it's a different approach for this agency, but I feel very confident that it's the right approach for us as we work through these rule processes.
And I would like to add one thing on that. The second Tuesday of every month, me and the vice chair and secretary meet with the governor's office to discuss things that we don't have going on in the commission. And one of those topics was the fees proposal. Their initial kind of response is that they would like us to explore this through the budget process and not through this. We have requested for a more formal audience to discuss those things in more details, because obviously we are facing a fiscal crisis that we need to resolve. I volunteered Chris, whether he was willing or not, to be the direct interface if that meeting happens. But either way, just wanted to inform you that communication occurred. So that's it. Call to the public.
Well,
Sorry about that, Steve.
only because it's super late and everyone's attention span is set to zero. But I just
Steve,
wanted,
could you come closer? Could you come closer, like somewhere where the people?
I'm sorry.
I have a hard time here. It's my fault.
I'm sorry, Eric.
Oh, it's all our fault. Can't hear everything.
My wife tells me I have the same issue too. So when this came up before, last fall, I went to Chairman Spillane to file legislation to amend RSA 2064A, because in that RSA, it gives the commission the right to oversee anything to do with wildlife. And I was under the impression, because of the way that this commission works with wildlife, that was all in place, but we needed that to be done with fisheries. And so I asked him to change the phraseation to say in section 1 to state conservation, protection, and management of fish and wildlife populations and habitats. And after the chairman did whatever it was that he had to do, his response was, "Thank you for your recent letter regarding proposed amendment to New Hampshire RSA 2064A to specify fish and wildlife. I appreciate your concern and the opportunity to clarify how our laws and policies already recognize fish as part of our state's wildlife. In science, biology, and conservation management, wildlife is a comprehensive term that encompasses all undomesticated animals living in their natural habitats, including mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish. Fish are not treated as a separate category outside of wildlife. They are an integral component of our natural ecosystems." I will not read the rest of this because of time. I will send you a copy of the entire response. But my takeaway from that was that the commission already has the power to oversee the conservation and determination of fisheries. So I just want to let everybody know that, because you voted to go down that path with the legislature, and it sort of has already been visited by Trout Unlimited. Okay.
Appreciate it, Steve.
Steve, RSA 207-1 is definition. Under the definition of wildlife, fishing included.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already in law.
Okay. So I just bring it up as.
Commissioner Stoll, who is obviously chair of legislator, is already exploring this question with our legal counsel, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
Motion
you,
to
everybody.
adjourn.
Yeah, motion to adjourn. Accepted. Thank you for a long day.